Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe, Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Our call and telephone number is 844-527-8723. And our live chat room, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in, is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. Please follow Joe and I on Facebook. Follow our page. Please share it with your friends. We have a lot of content going on there, not only our Facebook show, but also a lot of interviews. So follow us there. Share it with your friends. And on YouTube, if you're watching this or any program that we do on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. Please hit the like button and please hit the little bell, because with their algorithms, that's how we could get more widely seen, which obviously will help us to grow our audience. So we want to thank you all for joining us. We got a great show for you. As Joe and I always say, there's a lot of nonsense going out there right now. We're going to be covering Joe Biden and riots. We're going to be talking about Portland. God help that godforsaken city of Portland, Oregon. We're going to be talking about Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson getting harassed because Tucker Carlson is telling the truth, and quite frankly, the oligarchs don't like it. Donald Trump holding firm with the black vote. There's another thing that the left can't stand. Doesn't fall into their plans. You know, they thought that all these riots were going to take away from Trump's support in the black community. It's only actually increased his support, particularly amongst younger black voters, absolutely, which is interesting. So we have that. Joe Biden is a devout Catholic. At least that's what he says, and that's what the media says. So I guess it's true. Well, we're going to take that apart, okay? And we're going to talk about that a little bit. Planned Parenthood finally removed the sign of Margaret Sanger and has disavowed her. But we're going to talk about how maybe they could take a couple steps even further. You got the LGBT rage mob targeting a Catholic hospital. Christian Adoption Agency wins a battle in the New York courts. Courts, Joe. Judges. What about the judges? All about the judges. You have Congressman wants an investigation into anti-Christian hate crimes, okay, which Joe and I predicted this, I don't know, a long time ago. Before the front line with Joe and Joe was even a thought in our head. We said the goal is going to be on the backs of Christians in general and Catholics in particular, and we're seeing it now. Chamber of Commerce is at it again, and we're going to have to blow them apart. We're going to talk about that. Every team in Major League Baseball needs to change their name. Did you know that? And we have John Nolte in the Federalist. He gives us 8 good reasons to go out and get a carry permit for a firearm right now. And we're going to talk about how leftist mobs are attacking churches all over the world, and that there seems to be something satanic about it. So yeah, we're going to get into that all, and hopefully we get to everything. I mean, there's a lot of information to cover, but like all good things, we're going to start this program with a prayer.
In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, never was it known that anyone who sought your help or sought your intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, we fly unto you, O Virgin of Virgins, our Mother. To you we come, before you we stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not our petitions, but in your clemency hear and answer us. Amen. And I'm sorry. And before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show, keep an eye out for an interview we did. I'm going to post it on my Twitter feed, which a lot of the folks from Crusade tap into, with John Horvat, talking about why St. Louis is important to America. It was a very good conversation we just had. So keep an eye out for that. It's had quite a good following so far. Yeah. So I definitely think it's worth your time.
It was an excellent interview. And by the way, just on another note, if you are interested in supporting the Frontline with Joe and Joe, you know we're always grateful that you support us with your prayers. That's always the most important thing. But financially, if you'd like to drop a couple bucks in, you could go to GoFundMe and look up Support the Frontline with Joe and Joe. You'll see our ugly mugs there, and you could drop in a few bucks. In fact, during our Crusade show last week, we had two listeners throw in $350.
That was great.
That was great, and we're so grateful, because Joe and I are rocking and rolling, and it's all because of the support of good people like you. So where are we headed first, Joe Resinello?
So we're going to go to Joel Pollak. He's becoming one of our favorite authors, along with John Nolte. And he has a very interesting article that I came across. It caught my eye, and I think he makes a point that I think a lot of people may on the surface miss. What he's basically saying is if Joe Biden obviously, if he wins, there will be more riots, not fewer.
I found that interesting because I honestly, on the surface, I would have thought that maybe they would dwindle a little bit, but I think he's making a good point there.
And I want to expand that, and I think it'll spark a really good conversation. This is what he says. He says, if former Vice President Joe Biden and the Democrats win in November, there will be more riots. Some Americans may be tempted to hope otherwise, and I think he's right in saying that, because I think a lot of people on the surface will say, well, let me just vote for Biden and things will calm down. Pollack is saying otherwise. He's saying that since President Donald Trump is the real target of the unrest, the left will calm down once Trump is gone. The opposite is true. If the left can achieve their political goals through the use of violence, they will do so again. And this is the point. It is crucial that the voters teach Biden, the Democrats, and the left in general that political violence leads to defeat. You see, it's like a bully. You can't just appease the bully.
No.
He's always going to want more. And that's the point Pollack is basically saying. I agree with him.
I do too, because that's what the bully does. When he sees that you're weak, or he's going to punch you in the face again. I know, because when I was in high school, I got a little bullied by the upperclassmen because I was a wise mouth, so they kind of set me straight. But that's what bullies do, when you give in to them. I mean, why are we thinking it's going to be anything different? Remember something, Biden at the end of the day is still an old white man, okay? There's still, no matter what his policies are, no matter what, if he's the figurehead of the revolution, he's still an old white man. And you know what? They don't want him. They don't want him there either. So what are they going to do? When he gets in, they know they have an appeaser, as he's pointing out, okay? And they're going to exploit that. And they're going to exploit that beyond belief.
But also keep in mind, Bernie Sanders had about 35% of the United States in terms of voting bloc. He actually had a real following and a real movement. And those people who followed Bernie, they don't like Joe Biden.
No.
And they're not satisfied with Joe Biden. And I said this a number of months ago. I actually think that I can't predict how many, but I actually think that some of those folks aren't even going to show up. That's why he's trying to broadcast himself as a radical.
Yes.
Because he knows the people who are backing him, Tom Perez and Barack Obama, know that he has to appease that group, because they will not show up. Just like they don't like Donald Trump, they don't like Joe Biden.
And what's going to happen is, again, we don't agree with these, especially the younger crowd amongst the revolutionaries, okay? I think they're evil. I think they have evil goals. I think they're blind in many cases. But I'm not going to say that they're all stupid. In fact, I think it would be wrong to suggest that them, or at least let's say mid to upper management in their little organizations, they're not stupid people. They know Joe Biden is basically saying these things to get them hopefully excited about going out and voting for him on November 3rd. But again, they're not stupid. If they're not convinced that Joe Biden is going to do all these things, you know what they are? Unenthusiastic.
And that means you lose, Mr. Biden. So that's what basically, again, and again, with Pollack, I agree. They're not going to stop. And the interesting thing about this article, Pollack, I believe he's from South Africa.
Yes, he is.
And he breaks down, I'm not going to get into all the minutiae of the article, but he breaks down what happened in South Africa. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what happened here and how violence basically continues. And this is what he had to say. He said, the United States is not, contrary to what Biden told the nation on Independence Day, a systematically racist country. We have our First Amendment and a proud tradition of nonviolent protests. However, that tradition has been destroyed in the last several years, not just by Black Lives Matter, but also by Occupy Wall Street protests that preceded it, and which were enthusiastically embraced by Barack Obama and the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. The Occupy movement was not peaceful. It seized private and public property and expelled police. Crime was rampant within the occupied encampments. In some cities, protesters sought confrontations with the
Mhm.
police. The Black Lives Matter movement emerged in 2014 on the basis of a lie. Keep this in mind. This was Michael Brown, who attacked a police officer, had been killed in cold blood while trying to surrender. That was the lie that they said. Michael Brown, the case, it didn't even get past the grand jury of all black people. It didn't even go to trial.
And that's why they had to leave that case alone.
So that was a
basically.
lie. And that's where the Black Lives Matter movement emerged from. Basically, in city after city, police pulled back from patrols in black neighborhoods as a result of Michael Brown, leaving ordinary residents far more vulnerable to violent crime. The unrest that followed the horrific death of George Floyd revived Black Lives Matter protests, and that's what we're seeing now.
I really thought Black Lives Matter was done. We hadn't heard from them for a while before George Floyd. We heard from Antifa. Antifa's been active, let's say, for argument's sake, over the last 4 or 5 years. Okay, but we didn't hear from Black Lives Matter, and now they've eclipsed Antifa. You know, there's another.
They're funded. They're now being funded by corporations. If you ask me, I think it's misguided because, again,
We should boycott every. I'm sorry, Joe. We should boycott every company that we know is donating their money to any radical left organization. We can't stop them, I guess, but we really. I thought of it. Was thinking about this on the way here. In other words, that I wanted to talk to you about this. I don't know what we're going to do as conservatives in America. I can only see one solution. If there's a product or service you get from any of these companies, if there's not a competitor that, let's say, at the very least is politically and culturally neutral, no rainbow flags, no giving money to Planned Parenthood, they don't have to give money to the Catholic Church, we don't care. But if you can't find a company that's neutral, the only solution I can come up with is we have to get Spartan. We have to start doing without and hold on to our money. That means if there's something that they're offering that you want but you don't need, don't get it.
I would agree.
Don't
Joe.
get it. And then when they try to woo you back, you get their people on the phone, their marketing people and everything else say, I'm offended by the fact that you give Planned Parenthood money. So until you stop, I'm not buying your product or your service. My point in bringing this up, conservatives really somehow, some way, Joe and I are not, hopefully we're the ones to start something going in this country. Stop listening to conservatives like Sean Hannity who say, I don't believe in boycotts. Joe and I believe in boycotts because we know what rules these people ultimately matters is money.
It's the only thing that works.
At least with corporate America. I'm not talking about the ideologues.
They have no principles. Money is their God, and that's how you attack them. That's how you attack them. I've been saying that for a long, long time. You have to make them pay financially. Then they'll change their business model. Trust me. That's what guides the business model. It's the bottom line. They are married to it. That's where we have to hit them. But getting back to like Black Lives Matter, why it basically emerged, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a later story with regard to CNN, basically saying that the George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement currently is not moving the dial amongst particularly young black voters in America. They're still holding firm for Donald Trump. This is CNN, and we're going to get into that later. But that's what this is. I mean, at the end of the day, they know that they need to carry the black vote in cities like Detroit, Philadelphia, Chicago, to maintain their control of the Democratic Party. Some of these states are very, very tight races. If you lose that city vote, you lose that state, which means you lose the election. I mean, what happened with George Floyd, nobody is for that. Joe and I surely are not. But this is, and many people are saying it, including black people. Many prominent black people are saying this now. You don't have to look far to find it. This movement has eclipsed George Floyd.
Well, he was killed unjustly, okay, by that cop, and justice will be done in that case, okay? But he's gone now. He's not just dead. He's dead and gone. They don't care about George Floyd. They don't care about his family. We covered it on the show before. You're listening to us on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Our chat room, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in, is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. He's dead and gone. They used him. They used what happened to him, and they basically moved on from him. They'll just give him a little lip service, but this poor guy was killed the way he was. They used that murder, okay, to justify all their death and destruction that they brought on cities all around America But George Floyd is gone.
Well, it's about removing Donald Trump. And I mean, clearly the media, the Democrats are using leverage with regard to these riots. On the surface, there are people who are sincere. I will disagree with any person that uses violence. As Herschel Walker said, if you want to protest, protest from 9 to 5. Get a permit, protest at 5 o'clock, go home, come back and protest. This is not what these protests are about. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But I mean, at the end of the day, the riots in Portland and Chicago have no policy goals other than creating disorder. Their primary aim is to show that they and not the police are in control. And if Donald Trump wins re-election in November, and this is what Pollack is saying, they will riot. They will also riot if Biden wins, just as they rioted when Obama and Biden were in the administration.
And you mentioned South Africa. Something to remember about South Africa. And again, I don't know all the history. I didn't follow it very closely at the time. But one thing I understood is South Africa and a lot of these African countries, they did experience tremendous violence, particularly from the Marxists. Okay, people always want to forget the African National Congress was a Marxist organization. Okay, and just like, let's say, for argument's sake, the way they tried to whitewash Aristide in Haiti, let's say a while ago, when he was encouraging people to throw burning tires around people's necks. Okay, these are violent thugs. I will say this about South Africa. To his credit, Nelson Mandela could have gone down the violent route and did not do that. Okay, but since then, since his death, South Africa is an extremely violent place.
Oh, Johannesburg for a long time was the most violent city on the earth.
Well, and the Marxists are trying to take the land from the white farmers in South Africa. They're basically telling them, we're taking your land, get out. And a lot of the argument that I hear is from them is, look, if this is going to be a hostile place, but if you want the land, you got to pay for it. In other words, and then we'll get out. I mean, there's a lot of tension there. But to Pollack's point is that, we're dealing with Marxist revolutionaries. Why do you think that an old white man like Joe Biden is going to make these people go away? Biden is not going to, just like we always say, one man can't save this country and one man can't destroy this country. Okay. They still have a lot of work to do on the politically revolutionary left, destroying our institutions, perpetrating violence on people, in many cases, killing people. They have killed people in all this. Let's remember that.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Cops are under attack. I saw a video of the National Guard, which two disgraceful people, Clyburn and Nancy Pelosi, they called them stormtroopers and Gestapo. These are federal officers that are going into a hostile American city to try to restore law and order. And the Speaker of the House and a very major person in the Democrat Party in the House called them stormtroopers and Gestapo.
Well, because it's to their political advantage, and that's basically
that's going to turn people off, though.
Bingo. That's I think regular people, and that's who put you in the chair if you're the president. Normal people are seeing it. You see, it just shows you how little they care about you. Nancy Pelosi doesn't have to worry about her own safety, but how about people who commute in Portland, who go to work, who are just basically like, listen, I'm not involved. I just got to go to work because I have a mortgage and I have kids.
You think about it all the time. We talk about it all the time. In other words, we go to work in New York City, okay, which is not the safest place in the world, but it's relatively safe, okay? Now, it remains to be seen what happens when it fully opens up. But if you, let's say, take the bus to the subway, get up the Oculus and go down there, downtown, okay, you feel pretty secure in your person, okay? But get it straight. We risk our lives. Well, Joe and I work in Manhattan, okay? We literally, to one degree or another, we risk our lives by going into the city. If you're in Portland right now, the percentage of your risk goes up so many more times. Oh my
gosh.
You mentioned the person taking the subway or the bus in Portland, Oregon. That person is literally, they could come up in front of somebody who says, did you vote for Donald Trump in the last election?
Well, how about
and be killed on the spot.
How about they light your bus on fire? I mean, there's all types of stuff. And that's basically what Pollack, one of the points he's making here, is he's basically saying that if Trump wins, he will send in federal troops to stop the riots. See, Biden won't. He won't do that.
And won't that give them carte blanche?
To do anything they want. And that's why I absolutely agree with him. And this is the finer point Pollack's making. And again, I agree with this 100%. He said the only thing that will stop the riots is if the Democrats who support the rioters are defeated. It may take several such defeats. But once Democrats understand that there is a political price to pay for calling America racist and encouraging the destruction of the cities that they themselves govern, will they pull the plug? Otherwise, if Biden wins on a revolutionary platform after encouraging the peaceful protests, quote unquote, that are destroying our cities, we will never, never see the end of it. He's spot on.
Yes, he is.
He is spot on. I've said this a while ago in just private conversations with my wife. The Democrats have lost their way. This is not even the party of Barack Obama. This is not the party of Bill Clinton. I still didn't support them, either of them. This is a radicalized Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm.
They need to lose. They need to lose. And the people in charge of the Democratic Party, particularly Tom Perez and Barack Obama, who still has a lot of power, they need to basically, as a result of that loss, and Pollack is saying that, they need to be pushed aside by their own.
But the question is this. I think this is a legitimate question to ask. Is their goal, when you try to assess what their goals are, okay, is their goal to have an old white man like Joe Biden elected, even with all the puppet strings being pulled by people in the background like AOC and Tom Perez and Barack Obama? Okay, I'm sure that's a near-term goal, okay? Is their goal a $7 trillion budget that you described last week that you pulled up in your research? That's what Biden is proposing. Is their goal even a Green New Deal that's going to cost $90 trillion over the course of the next 10 years? None of these things ultimately, and this is what people need to get through their heads, okay? You're dealing with Marxist revolutionaries. I wish people would understand these are not, let's say, liberal Democrats, all right? These are Marxist revolutionaries. Those are what they say their goals are now. If they achieved any one of those things, okay, all that's going to lead to is the further deterioration of the American economy, okay, which ultimately will lead to what they want, which is an overthrow of our economic and political system.
That's the plan. Because then they will sweep in.
That is when you hear the phrase, keep your eyes on the prize. The people that know what they're doing in that movement, they know that that's the prize. It's not a Green New Deal. It's state ownership of the means of production through the Green New Deal, or state ownership of the means of production through universal health care. It's all state ownership of the means of production, which will then turn you and me and all of you good people out there into a slave, because Marxism creates slaves. Marx famously said, workers of the world unite. All you have to lose is your chains. People need to turn that statement on itself. Marx was proposing chains. That's what Marxism does. That's what communism does. It doesn't liberate you from chains. It puts the chains on and it puts them on even more. That's what you get with Marxism. You are now a slave. There will be the elites, like we always talk about, all those people we mentioned, Barack Obama, Tom Perez. They're not going to be like the rest of us. Please. They're not going to be serfs like the rest of us. They turn all of us into serfs, okay? But they will be at the top. They will be at the top pulling all the strings, and you will be a slave. People, even liberal Democrats, need to get that through their head. People who, let's say, are free marketeers, they believe in the free market, they do believe in higher taxation, but on the economy, they want a free market economy. Liberal Democrats need to get that through their head, too. Marxism is what that party wants. That is the goal that they have.
I mean, Bernie Sanders made no mistake about it. And basically, Biden is appeasing the Sanders voting bloc. That's why, we covered it last week, he is asking a $7 trillion budget for new outlays. That's all Sanders' low-hanging fruit to appease those folks. This is a radicalized party, and that's why Pollack is saying they must be defeated. You see, they have to figure out for themselves that this doesn't work. Eventually, I'm hoping, and I do think Biden will lose, But eventually, I'm hoping the Democratic Party will basically say, listen, this is a losing ticket. This idea, the AOCs of the world, the Bernie Sanders of the world, and even Barack Obama, who I still say does not believe in the Constitution as it's written.
Absolutely not.
I'm sorry.
Well, none of them really do.
So what they need to do is lose. And they need to lose a few times. And then they'll figure it out. And then they'll become Democrats. That doesn't mean I'll support them, particularly because of their abortion and same-sex marriage position. I'll never support that. However, they could maybe then become a Clinton Democrat. Hillary Clinton, believe it or not, Joe, had a winning strategy. Bernie Sanders ruined Hillary Clinton. She was a dog, but her platform for a Democrat was palatable to the average American. You see, the platform now, what they're doing, and we've covered this time and time again, we're coming to a break in a couple minutes, we'll pick it up on the other side. They're hiding their platform from you because they know it's not palatable to the average American.
What was the one thing that signaled to the left that America does not that we're not ready for it, that America rejects socialism, rejects Marxism?
Why didn't Sanders lose?
Obamacare. No, I'm saying Obamacare was the signal for them where they said, we're just going to have to do this in the old school Marxist way, either through violence or sneakily or whatever. But we can't be open about it because, look, the American people didn't even want Obamacare. 70% of the American people. That was passed against our will. That's why in 2010, the Republicans swept in. But we're going to pick that up on the other side of the break. You're listening to The Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. We are in the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Our call-in telephone number is 844-527-8723, and our live chat room, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in, is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. Follow Joe and I on Facebook, please. Like, subscribe, and share all of our YouTube stuff. There's a lot of good stuff up there, and you're feeling generous. You could find us at Support the Frontline with Joe and Joe on GoFundMe and drop a couple bucks in. Having said that, thank you for all your support, and we'll talk to you on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everyone, to The Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello, and we are way into the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Our call-in telephone number is 844-527-8723, and our live chat room, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in, is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. Let's pick up on that. I think that's an important point as far as their tactics are concerned and how they view the American people. Obamacare, in terms of socialism, is socialism light. They figured they're going to get that through, and that was only going to be a stepping stone. Tell me if you agree. To universal health care. They saw how unpopular that was amongst the American people. 67 to 75% of the American people did not want Obamacare. And in 2010, after it was rammed down our throat, with some disgraziad Republican support too, the Tea Party swept in, and in 2010, the Republicans took the House and Senate. The left knows this, Joe. They know this. So they must be saying in their minds, we can't do things incrementally. The American people don't even want that. So what are they doing? They're doing violence on the one hand.
Well, they're breaking down the foundation. They're softening the country.
And getting us ready for that violent overthrow of our economic and political system. You said earlier, do they love the Constitution? No. They don't care about the Constitution. They don't recognize the boundaries and the
Nor do they respect
They don't respect them. Well, they don't respect any moral boundaries anyway. But when you have a document that says, well, wait a minute, this is a document of negative rights. This is what the document says the government cannot do. Well, the left doesn't want that. These are totalitarians. Okay, they have no regard for the rules. They don't want to know what they cannot do. They want to push the envelope to see what they can do. And when they get full power, as we saw under Stalin and many others, Mao and Castro, when they get the power that they want, well, there is no more constitution. There is simply the will of the leader. And that's it.
And again, Bernie Sanders is a devout socialist. You see, people may listen to our voice and just write us off. These two are crazy. They're talking about Marxism. The founders of Black Lives Matter, you could find this, it's documented, said we are trained Marxists.
Yep.
This is not my words. These are theirs. Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, who has a big say at the table. We talked about this last week. They have the 110-page document, a unity document of Sanders and Biden, of ideas. Sanders got a lion's share of his ideas in that document.
It oozes Bernie Sanders.
He is a socialist. You see, this is about a change. Barack Obama masked it a little bit better. But Barack Obama could talk shop with these folks. He does not believe, and you say, oh, Joe, he does believe in this country. I always point to his record in the Supreme Court when I say that Barack Obama did not believe in the Constitution because he had the worst record of any modern president of cases that he brought to the Supreme Court.
And he had more, by the way, a very telling sign along the lines of what you're saying. He had more unanimous decisions against him than any president in modern memory.
Many of those cases should never even have been in the Supreme Court. You didn't even have to go to law school to know that it wasn't in line with the Constitution.
Right.
And the judges echoed that,
right,
as Joe said, 9-0. This is the change that is trying to be swept in, and they're trying to do it in the darkness of night, just how they take down these statues.
Mm-hmm.
Notice they're not doing it in the middle of the day. They just took down the Christopher Columbus statue in Chicago in the middle of the night.
Right.
People who do things properly don't hide. During the George Floyd debacle, New Jersey passed an LGBT education plan for all public schools, K through 12. During that debacle,
right,
when no one was paying attention,
because they know if you were paying attention, you're not going to go
support
for it.
And this is what they're doing. And this is basically, I'll be honest with you, Joe and I, one of the goals of why we do this, it's to bring to light this darkness, because it is darkness. And keep also this in mind: Bernie Sanders lost to Joe Biden, a very tired, and if you ask me, incompetent man. And I don't mean to sound derogatory or slanderous towards him. He's not sharp.
No, that's not slanderous. So that's an intelligent, objective observation.
He's not sharp. And it's obvious. He lost, and Bernie Sanders is sharp as a tack. The reason why he lost is America is not on board with radicalized socialism on the surface, and Bernie Sanders is on the surface. He made no bones about his positions. He never, ever, ever veered. Joe Biden has to incorporate those into his platform. He's doing it, and they're trying to hide it from the American people. If you fall for that, then that's on you.
And then along those same lines, you should hold it against the Democrats that they don't want to debate Donald Trump. It goes to what Joe is speaking about. If you don't want to debate, that means you don't want this guy on a stage. I actually was talking to one of my friends who I respect. He's a liberal. I know he's a liberal, okay? Not a wacko, but a liberal. He's going to vote for Biden. He says, oh, no, I think Biden should absolutely debate Trump. I think it would be no contest. I said, yeah, right. Trump is going to eat his lunch. Hillary Clinton was infinitely more sharp than Joe Biden, and Trump ate her lunch.
Oh,
okay?
Yeah.
They don't, my friend who, like I said, is fairly objective, he don't know if Biden would win. But Sarah Palin destroyed, and I always gave Sarah Palin a lot more credit than the media did. They savaged that woman. She handled Joe Biden like he was a political novice when she debated him. She crushed him in her debate, the vice presidential debate back in 2008. You think that Donald Trump's not going to do the same thing? Now this is what, 12 years forward where Biden's mind is deteriorated? Donald Trump is going to wreck him. My point is, why do you think they don't want debates? Because what Joe just said, they want to just keep it all under the radar. Keep it all under the radar. Just orange man bad, orange man bad. Joe Biden, he supports women. Orange man bad.
Joe Biden's a moderate.
Joe Biden's a moderate.
A centralist. And it's basically all he is the wrapping paper. It's the wrapping paper. The Democratic Party, one of my messages and Joe's message from the beginning of this show, this is not the Democratic Party of your grandfather. Joe Biden is the wrapping paper. This is a radicalized party, and they're trying to sell it to the moderate Democrat in Ohio, in Florida, in Michigan,
Pennsylvania,
telling them, putting Joe Biden's face, oh, Uncle Joe, he's just like you. He's a moderate. He's a centralist. No, he's not.
No, he's not.
They're pulling the strings. Joe Biden's the face. This guy and this party and this platform is dangerous to America. It's a fact.
It's radical, what it is.
But I'll tell you what, I do give, I just from looking at social media, I'll tell you what, I think a lot of people are starting to see it.
I do.
I think they're getting nervous, even to be honest with you, with all this civil unrest, and we're talking about civil unrest now, we're going to get to Portland, Oregon. Even in the Black community, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, young African Americans in America, they're not on Joe Biden's side.
We're gonna talk about that, but I want to make a point now about that. One of their biggest nightmares, one of the biggest let's call it thorns in their side. There is a video going around of Kanye West, okay, crying to a crowd. I almost killed my baby. I almost killed my baby. He's talking about his daughter, Northwest. Okay, that's the child's name. I guess it's his daughter. They don't want that. They don't want a very, very, very popular black man who appeals to a very, very, very large swath of young African Americans. Hearing him say, when he was they were trying to convince him to have an abortion, or her, Kim Kardashian, to have an abortion, and he's crying now to this crowd, they almost had me kill my baby. That's not working for them, because a lot of those young African Americans, particularly women, say, well, that's what they've been telling me too. They wanted me to kill my babies, that I gave birth to. Or maybe the woman says to herself, I did have an abortion because they told me this, that, and the other thing. They don't want Kanye West doing that. That will only throw support towards Donald Trump, particularly on the abortion issue. So they have a lot of things working against them right now. But I just we'll get into that more. But you're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. We're way in the breach on the Crusade channel. Always on air, always online, crusadechannel.com. The last live radio station standing, and our live chat room, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in, is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. So where are we headed next?
We're going to Portland, Oregon. Sadly.
My stomach just jumped a little bit and turned.
Democrats claim stopping 2 months of Portland rioting is an attack on democracy. Please pack up and go home, was the response of Oregon Governor Kate Brown when acting Department of Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf called to offer federal assistance. Leftist gaslighting over the deployment of federal agents to address months of nightly riots in the city of Portland, Oregon, has reached epic proportions. The New York Times published an article entitled, this is rich, Federal Agents Unleash Militarized Crackdown on Portland. Here's an excerpt from the article. Federal agents dressed in camouflage and tactical gear have taken to the streets of Portland, unleashing tear gas, bloodying protesters, and pulling some people into unmarked vans in what Governor Kate Brown of Oregon has called a blatant abuse of power. The Times continues. The extraordinary use of federal force in recent days, billed as an attempt to stop persistent unrest and protect government property, has infuriated local leaders who say the agents have stoked tension. This is an attack on our democracy, Mayor Ted Wheeler of Portland is quoted as saying. This is a crock of you-know-what.
Yep.
This is crap.
Democracy in action. even in the form of protest, does not give you the right to break things, to deface buildings, to attack police, to attack these federal officers that went in there, yes, dressed like camouflage, but they lied. They found out they lied. The van that they pulled the one dude into was clearly marked police, was in an unmarked car. But you see what they have to do? They have to make it seem like I said earlier about Pelosi and Clyburn, they're stormtroopers. They're Nazis. They're Gestapo. They come in the middle of the night. No, they're you know what they are? They're trying to restore law and order. They are dressed in camouflage, and they are militarized because you know who they're fighting against? People who are breaking things and hurting people. This is not an attack on democracy. It is, in fact, restoring democracy, because without law and order, you do not have democracy. And Portland right now, Joe, is devoid of law and order.
Just to be clear, that this is not a peaceful protest. I mean, sadly, a lot of networks are trying to bill it as such, and many politicians are turning a blind eye. The Portland riots have damaged federal buildings, including the Edith Green, Welling Wyatt Federal Building and the Hatfield Courthouse. They have also vandalized the Gus Solom Courthouse and the Pioneer Courthouse. On July 10th, a mob tried to ambush the Portland Police Department during a shift change. These anarchists have assaulted law enforcement officers with rocks, bottles, hammers, tasers, and stun guns. They've launched fireworks, threw fecal matter and large objects, and pointed tasers at federal law enforcement officers.
I'm sorry. I got to interrupt you for a second. There is one thing in that whole thing. You want to throw things at me, I could duck. You want to throw an unopened beer can at me, I get it. The bags of urine and fecal matter, okay, that's going to set me off. You throw that thing at me and it makes contact, all right, you better run for the hills. I'll take off every gun. I will take off my camouflage. And as a private citizen, I'm going to beat the crap out of you if you do that. And they've done that, by the way. They did that to Gavin McInnes. When Gavin McInnes tells the story, he was going in. It was a black tie affair. He was dressed in a tux, and one of these Antifa thugs, they threw either it was a bag of urine or something on him, and he was wearing a tux. He said, "I punched the guy right in the face." He goes, and the funny part, he goes, "I was surprised at how soft his face was." You know, talking about Antifa. But my point is that, again, can you now a bag of let's
but
say,
these are police officers. You see, this is the point.
Well, that's the point that we need to make.
You have no right as a protester. I'll show you protests. I'm going to point to it. Joe Pasillo goes first Saturday to Planned Parenthood on Mott Street in New York City. Pray the rosary across the street, go to mass, stand in front of the clinic, the abortion mill, Planned Parenthood, pray the rosary, march back to the church. That's a peaceful protest. And
by the way, just to throw in that one of the reasons why, aside from the fact that I believe and we believe that, yes, to pray for those children and their mothers and everybody is pleasing to God, is that Planned Parenthood has admitted. Let's just talk about the effectiveness of a particular protest. In this case, in front of Planned Parenthood, Father Fidelis calls it a witness. Nonetheless, it is a protest. You are protesting against abortion. Sure. But I will say this, as far as just the protest aspect and trying to be effective in getting something done, Planned Parenthood has admitted that when there are people praying outside of Planned Parenthood, they have up to a 75% no-show rate. 75%.
What that tells me is people know it's wrong.
Exactly.
You see, that's, again, people who do bad things cloak bad things in darkness. Mm-hmm. That's what the devil did with Adam and Eve. Oh, no, the apple, fine. It's not a problem. Right. Well, it was a problem, clearly. You see, that's what bad people do. They cloak their agenda. That's what Planned Parenthood does. But getting back to my point, again, this is violent. Mm-hmm. You have no right to strike an officer, to throw things at an officer. And if your government and the police unions are not, don't listen to my voice, do your own research. The police unions are saying it. They, as it has happened in New York City, they have turned their backs on those officers. They've left them high and dry. They are being attacked by people.
Right.
Or they're not being called to certain situations. Antifa should never have had a place at the table in Portland. That was empowered by the mayor.
Mm-hmm.
He could have shut that down in a minute. Why did Andy Ngo have to get hit in the head with a battery? Why did the Proud Boys, because that's what happens, and I don't advocate vigilantism, but when the police don't do their job because the government is not letting them, you will have vigilantism.
Well,
See,
you can't now. Look, again, we're not defending the Proud Boys. That would not
Absolutely
be
not.
our tactic.
That's not our deal.
But on the one hand, you cannot blame when like Joe mentioned, when the city government is doing nothing, when the state government is doing nothing, when the police are being told to stand down. Okay, well, what do you expect people to do? I'm not going to let them come through my town if the police are standing down. I'm going to try to get men in my town to go there and stand firm in the middle of the street and repel them. Okay. Now, I wouldn't do it the way Proud Boys did it, but nonetheless, you can't expect us to do anything different. We pay taxes so that the cops will protect us.
And it's a funny thing. You mentioned that because one of the parents is that the child was a teenager who was murdered in that Chaz community in Seattle is suing the city of Seattle.
And I hope that's the father. I hope he wins millions and millions of dollars.
I think he will. I think they didn't do their job, but I'll take it to another level. If I invested in a business in that city and you allowed that community to be basically taken over by thugs and armed men and I lost my money, you better believe I'm suing you.
And this is, by the way,
I pay you taxes.
This is, by the way, Joe, why we need good judges. Because when you go up in front of a sane judge, the judge is going to say to the city, in this case, you were derelict in your duty.
It's governmental malfeasance.
And so, therefore, you are going to pay this person $500,000 because that's what their business was worth, and you did not protect their business. And they're taxpayers. That's why they pay for that protection. What do you think? Cops just like that idiot who said that if you call up a cop at 2 o'clock in the morning because somebody's breaking into your house, it's white privilege. No, I pay taxes, so when that person's trying to break into my house, the cops come and protect me. If they're not there and somebody gets hurt in my house, God forbid, killed, okay, I'm gonna take you to court, and you're going to lose. And this is some of the things that we have to start doing. Stop letting conservatives tell you, the lawsuits don't work. Yes, they do. Just ask Nick Sandman.
Friday night marked the 50th night of rioting.
50 nights.
50 nights of rioting in the city.
It's like the unholy Pentecost.
The whole country has been watching the situation in Portland devolve. President Trump, every single night, and he has said it, and I absolutely support him. He has every right to send feds in to break this up, especially when the city and state officials fail to act. The reality in Portland is the opposite of the situation the DNC describes. One city resident posted on Twitter about some of the tactics favored by rioters: destruction of statues, burning of police precincts, incendiary devices thrown at police, taser pointers pointed at officers' eyes, bags of urine and feces thrown at officers. This is the bottom line. I'm pretty sure the Democrats' defense of Portland riots will not be a winning issue in November. That's why they don't want Joe Biden to debate Donald Trump, because this is a loser. A lot of these people don't even vote.
Remember why they don't want Joe Biden to debate Donald Trump? For a number of reasons. They're damned if they do, and they're damned if they don't. Okay, and Republicans should demand debates, by the way. They should not let this go, and they should spend so much money blanketing America, saying point blank, Joe Biden, Tom Perez, Barack Obama, and the entire Democratic leadership are cowards because they don't want to let Joe Biden get up there and talk about ideas. Why?
Because he doesn't have ideas.
Well, he doesn't have any, but here's where they're damned if they do and damned if they don't. And when I see the left squirm, I get a warm, gooey feeling on the inside, okay, when I see them squirm. Let's say Joe Biden moderates in a debate with Trump. No, I don't agree with attacking police, and taking let's say.
He'll try to do that.
He'll try to do that. What's going to happen then? The radicals are going to turn around and say, or at least the rank and file, they're going to turn around and say, well, I'm not voting for this guy. Let's say Joe Biden stays on the left. No, these are protesters. They have the right to do it. And Trump's a fascist and blah, blah, blah. Then he loses the moderates because the same people in the Midwest that you were describing in Pennsylvania and Michigan and the rest of those places say, well, if Joe Biden's for those riots, guess what? I'm not voting
Well,
for him.
that's why they're going to lose.
That
Joe,
will-
it's a house of cards. It's all based on lies. It's held together with glue and smoke. This is a bunch of crap.
Right.
And here, to put even a finer point on the governmental malfeasance of Portland, Oregon.
Good word.
Last week, the city council unanimously passed a resolution that effectively bans the Portland Police Bureau from assisting federal law enforcement, as Commissioner Chloe Udell accused the Trump administration of attempting to use Portland as a proving ground for fascism.
Oh, here they go with that fascist word.
The resolution passed prevents, this is what it says. Here's an excerpt from the resolution. It prevents cooperation. This is just, I actually think this is treason. It prevents cooperation between local and federal law enforcement. A local officer who provides, requests, or willingly receives operational support from a militarized federal force will be subject to discipline by the city.
Well, the unions are going to have something to say
But
about that.
that's
The police
basically
unions are not going to allow that to
Do
happen.
you believe that they're willing to put American lives on the line? Why? Because I hate Donald Trump.
That's the only reason.
That's it,
Right.
people. I'm breaking it down for you, and everything I'm telling you is true.
Yep.
I hate Donald Trump. Once again, these are not peaceful people.
No.
You have no right to hurt people. You have no right to attack police officers. And if you do, they have every right to arrest you. And if your city is not willing to confront these thugs, the government has every right to come in. I've been saying this for months.
Remember something. If you want to think in your mind for 1 second, these are peaceful people, go ask Andy Ngo.
We mentioned him. He was a
Okay.
homosexual journalist who basically called out Antifa, and he was physically attacked.
No, he got brain trauma. That's how bad it was. And Antifa is the one that beat the crap out
And
of
the
him.
LBGT basically
Didn't say anything.
didn't say a word.
We covered that last year, okay? Last year, when they were doing the anniversary of Stonewall. I said, well, where is your concern for Andy Ngo? Okay? None. Crickets. You didn't hear anything from them. Because when you're a conservative, it doesn't matter if you're black, gay, woman, all the protected classes, Jew. If you're a conservative, it's open season on you. So anyway, you're with the front line with Joe and Joe. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back, continue the conversation. We've got a lot more to talk about. What are we talking about next, Joe? Tucker Carlson. You're going to want to hear about this. So we're on the Crusade Channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. The chat room, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in, is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. On Facebook and YouTube, please find the front line with Joe and Joe. Like, subscribe, share, hit the little bell, do all that fun stuff. And Joe and I will see you on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe, Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello, and we are way, way, way into the breach on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Our call-in telephone number is 844-527-8723, and our live chat room, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in, is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. Please follow Joe and I on Facebook and YouTube at the front line with Joe and Joe. We do have a GoFundMe. If you go to GoFundMe, you can see us at Support the Front Line with Joe and Joe. Drop in a couple bucks if you're feeling generous and you love what we do. And please always remember, the best thing you could do for us is to keep us in your prayers. So we ended the first segment. We talked a lot about Biden. We talked a lot about the Democrats, Portland, okay, the left. I mean, there's so much to talk about. We could go on for days talking about that and everything that's going on. But we have to get into now their particular viciousness. In fact, I think when you hear the story, what you're going to hear, the way I hear it, is a callousness on the part of the media when it comes to just the lengths they're willing to go to silence the voices like ours and many other people out there. So having said that, I'm going to hand this over to Joe because I think this is a story that needs to be covered and shouted from the rooftops.
As Joe said, we're going to talk a little bit about Tucker Carlson. We have two, I think, very good segments to basically convey to you, good listeners. But basically, what Tucker said is the New York Times is threatening to reveal where I live, and I quote, to hurt us, to injure my wife and kids. Tucker Carlson revealed the New York Times had a story in the work that would divulge the location of his home, which could potentially put him and his family in harm's way. This is a direct quote from Tucker Carlson. He said, last week, the New York Times began working on a story about where my family and I live. As a matter of journalism, there is no conceivable justification for a story like that. The paper is not alleging we've done anything wrong. We haven't. We pay our taxes. We like our neighbors. We've never had a dispute with anyone. So why is the New York Times doing a story on the location of my family's house? Well, you know why? To hurt us, to injure my family, my wife, my kids, so that I will shut up and stop disagreeing with them.
What does that tell you? Just say, just on the surface, Tucker Carlson, who we've said on this show before, you could take everything at Fox News, everything, okay, and throw it in the garbage as far as we're concerned. Tucker Carlson is fighting the culture war. So is Laura Ingraham. Now, there's many other good people on Fox News. Don't get me wrong. But if you just had those two shows, particularly Tucker Carlson, okay, then he becomes their enemy because it's obvious why they're doing this, because he's effective. Go ahead.
But he goes on. He basically reminded the viewers that nearly 2 years ago, and I do remember this, I remember seeing it live, footage. Another such incident occurred when he was residing in Washington, D.C., and an angry mob showed up at his house, forcing his wife to hide while the angry mob, aligned with Antifa, vandalized his home. And then he goes on in his quote, and I want you to pay very close attention to this. Editors there knew exactly what will happen to my family when the story runs. I called them. And
listen to this, everybody. Listen to this, please. If you haven't heard the story yet, listen to what Joe's about to read. This is so important and dangerous.
I called them and I told them, but they didn't care. They hate my politics. They want this show off the air. If one of my children gets hurt because of a story they wrote, they won't consider it collateral damage. They know it's the point of the whole exercise, to inflict pain on our family, his family, to terrorize us, to control us. That's the kind of people they are.
Now, I want to.
He is spot on.
He is 1,000% correct, and everybody in this country, liberals included, should come out and be vocal about this. Okay, the federal government, all you conservatives out there who hate when the federal government does something, don't get scandalized by what I'm about to say. The federal government has to take action in this case. New York Times should be held accountable, and don't give me that, well, nobody reads them anymore. It doesn't matter. It is a crime, or it should be a crime, to publish somebody's address against their will. It should be, because you want to know why? Because you do anything nowadays. People sell your information. You could request that your address be kept confidential. It doesn't matter. With the internet, it gets out there anyway. The federal government needs to come out against the New York Times. They need to take action and inflict severe penalties on them. Number one. Number two, if they don't, if conservative, you know what I want to do? If this happens, it doesn't happen. If people go in front of Tucker Carlson's house, I think we should get 1,000 Catholic men and we should go and protest in front of Joe Biden's house. That's what I think. And you know what we'll do? Rather than threaten his family, we'll pray the rosary. But we'll do it right on his freaking front porch and let them, and they can't do anything to us, can they? Because evidently, if anybody goes to Tucker Carlson's house, they're not going to do anything to them. Are they?
You know what this is? There's a word in this that I think I'd like to focus on. It's control. You see, these are the tolerant ones. We're so tolerant of everything else. They are the totalitarianists. They are absolute and utter Marxists. They are absolutely and utterly despicable. They are not interested in anyone's opinion but their own.
That's it.
If you were tolerant, you have no problem with Tucker Carlson. The reason why they have a problem with him is his his show is the highest rated show in the history of television.
Wait till
In the history of television, and they know it's effective.
Wait till Joe and I have about 1 million or 2 subscribers on YouTube. Believe me, they're going to be coming after us too. Which my wife did say, once that happens, you know you made it.
Well,
okay?
all I'm saying is they are trying to control him. These are not my words. This is what the New York Times is doing.
Right.
It's not what I'm saying. It's what they're doing. This is not an American idea.
Well, by the way,
you know what it is, Joe? I'll be
ahead.
honest with you. The Democratic Party, they've turned into gangsters.
Well, that's what communists are.
They are turned into.
I told you last
they're
week,
gangsters.
and we told the good people on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. I told people you ought to go out and you ought to read the Black Book of Communism. The premise of the book is that communism, international communism, was nothing. It was nothing other than a criminal conspiracy. When you call them gangsters, you're exactly what was Joseph Stalin was a legitimate leader of a nation? No, he was a gangster who, once they aroused enough passion and hatred against the Tsar and overthrew the Tsar, what did he do? He killed everybody in sight. He killed all the members of their coalition. They had a civil war. He had the power, and then he imposed his will on everybody while he enriched himself. He's a gangster. Why do people think Mao Zedong was a gangster? Why is it that we don't call things what they are? These are criminals. To be communist is to be a criminal. You seek the theft of other people's labor. That makes you a criminal. It's a violation of, what is it, the 6th commandment, the 5th commandment? Thou shalt not steal. Communists are all about theft, Joe. That is by definition a criminal, which makes them gangsters.
What they would say is the corporate structure is about that.
If the corporate,
that's what they would say.
Of course, right? Because the guy, let's say, look, we have our problems with what's going on in corporate America.
We're going to talk about that.
We're going to talk about that, but legitimately, somebody owns a business, builds a business, and makes a profit for themselves. Okay, and they do it in a moral way. No, that person is not exploiting labor. Okay, no, that person didn't steal anything. That person retained the value of their labor by taking that labor and putting it into their own business and building it from there. Now, does that mean we should have monstrous companies that are worth $1 trillion? No, I don't agree with that either. Okay, but no, the free market system is not theft. You don't get what you don't earn. Our current system, you get what you don't earn. But that's crony capitalism. That's not real capitalism. That's a pretend free market. That's not a real free market. And we'll talk about that when we get to the Chamber of Commerce. Do you understand my point?
Sure.
Okay. Their arguments fall flat on their face. Okay. Henry Ford didn't steal anything. Henry Ford paid his workers well. Henry Ford was a central figure in building the middle class of this country, when in the middle of the early or in the early part of the 20th century, he increased his workers' wages by double so that they could afford those cars that they were manufacturing. He almost single-handedly built the middle class. So don't start with these capitalists they're the thieves, and the communists are all these wonderful people who come in and they're just going to right the ship by making everything
communism
equal.
is a failed idea. Like any person, I'll be honest with you, who is for any form of socialism or communism is not a student of history. Communism, look at the 20th century. First of all, look at how many people were murdered by Marxists, but also look at socialist states.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing very well.
You think?
Europe is a basket case. I say this time and time again. Go to any major capital in Europe, Rome, Paris, not London. I'm not going to group them in. Go to just about any Madrid.
Spain is socialist.
Lisbon. Drive 50 miles outside of the capital. Gets poor real fast. Poor real fast. In the city, everyone looks pretty. Everyone's got nice clothes on, nice cafes, all that other stuff. Take a train, go out half hour outside the city, gets poor real fast.
And real poor.
Socialism destroys the middle class. It destroys the middle class. It destroys business growth.
Right.
It destroys. When's the last time a major idea came out of Portugal? When's the last time?
Fatima.
Well, yeah. When's the
And that
last
didn't come from
time
the government. That came from heaven.
a major idea, innovation, I'm talking about massive innovation,
Right.
came out of Italy, came out of Spain, came out of France? It doesn't. Does that mean that we're smarter than them? No. What it means is you have the freedom here to innovate. That's what capitalism does.
And the system rewards you for your
And
innovation.
that's why people work hard. You see, it's a failure. It's a failure. And people who grasp this idea, frankly, are either ignorant of history or have their head in the sand.
You're talking about people who espouse socialism.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is not a successful
Or
model.
okay, but you make a very good point. I'm not going to disagree with you, but expand on it a little bit. Okay, many of these people are blind. Okay, many of these people are ignorant. But let's not discount those that know exactly what they're doing. The puppet masters who are controlling all this. You mentioned control earlier. Okay, they know exactly what they're doing. They know what social. You think Maduro doesn't know what socialism does? Of course he does. He saw Castro impoverish an entire nation, make $1 billion himself, and he thought, as gangsters do, well, I want a piece of that action. Notice, what do I got to do? Turn your nation into a socialist nation, spread the wealth to all your cronies, and just keep your jackboot on everybody's face and destroy free enterprise. And what do you get? Funny? You get Venezuela, but what does he get in the meantime? Wealthy. Because he's a gangster.
And then Bernie Sanders will say, everybody in Cuba has health care. Everybody can read. No one has electricity, Bernie. People are impoverished. They're driving 1950 cars. My friend just went to Cuba on a cruise last year, a guy I work with. He said the poverty was staggering. By the way, the administration, the Castros, they lived in a blocked off area of the island.
Right.
You can't even get to it. What does that tell me? They don't want people to see how they live there.
Right.
They probably live better than I do. In fact, I'm sure they do. You see, this is people, know what it is? It's a cop-out. I'm going to tell you right now why a lot of people are embracing this. Because it's hard to make it here. To make it in America, you have to work your ass off. I'm going to tell you this right now.
Joe, I would say one thing. I'm sorry to interrupt. I would say this, only as a little bit of a caveat. I think it's difficult because you're risking, especially if you're going to go into business or buy a business. Okay, you are risking, and it is difficult. But again, if it's not difficult, then if it's easy, everybody would do it. But here's the only thing I would say to you, because I knew where you were going with this. But what's not difficult is living a good life, even in our capitalist system, as a worker of some kind. You could be a professional, you could be white collar, you could be blue collar. You still could live a very good life under our system. And the beautiful part about this country is if you don't want to own a business and you don't want to buy a business, you just don't want to be a businessman, you don't want the headache, but you say, but I do have labor and skills that I could sell, and I could get like a construction worker, let's say. Construction worker goes out, makes 80, 90, 100 grand a year, okay? And wants to, get ahead that way. You could live a very good life in America without all that. So that's all I would say is that's easy to do.
But you still have to, you got to work.
But
I say this because I'm a product of that. My father had a one-man barbershop. I have a corporate job. I have an MBA. I got 2 master's degrees at night while working full time. My day began at 5 in the morning. I didn't come home till 10 for 7 years. Mm-hmm. If that, you don't magically have a good life. You have to work. You see, nothing is going to be given to you. And I think that there are people who realize that they're not willing to do it. And socialism promises them a lie, which they embrace willingly, because they're not willing to put in that time. Because I'm going to tell you, I am a product, and so is my wife, who is a black woman. And I will argue with anyone who says that there is systematic racism in this country. There are undoubtedly racists in America. But to say the whole system is racist is a lie.
That is a lie.
My wife would not have the job that she has if it was. She's black. She went to a great MBA program and has a good job because she worked hard. No one is going to give you anything. No one should. You're not entitled to anything.
Right.
And this is what America is. I know plenty of people who work hard and have the fruits of their labor, but they had to work hard.
One thing I will tell you is this, and this doesn't go for the leadership of these socialists and these communists, but people who I do think that they're misguided when they think that there's a solution that you could find in socialism and communism for some of the ills that we do have, let's say, in our current free market system. Their solutions are wrong. Their impulses a lot of the times, not the ideologues, their impulses are right. One thing I would say is this: you talk about working hard, and I agree with that. But then you work hard only to have your labor stolen from you, okay? And in that case, I'm going to criticize both the communists and, let's say, the capitalists, particularly the bankers, okay? Because what are the two things? So you mentioned a good point. You say you work hard, you save your money, okay? But when you go out and you work hard and you have fingers in the pot, but it's your pot.
I get it.
It doesn't belong to the government. The government confiscates your wealth in the form of confiscatory taxation. Personal income tax should be abolished. There's no justification for a personal income tax. That's your paycheck is your property. Even if you don't own a house, your paycheck is your property. The government, remember this, the government takes their money out of your paycheck before you get a chance to spend one thin dime on yourself or your family. That's number one. You have an entire system in this country. You talk about capitalism and reforms that need to be changed. Somebody explain to me how manufacturers, let's say GM, okay, how is it that they own a bank? I'm just using that as an example. GMAC.
Because they have good interest
rates. Well, but that's my point. But then what do? Now, should they get their profit from selling you that GM car? Sure. I think we're capitalists. You're entitled to your profit. Do they have the right to charge you even more because they have a high-priced item that nobody in the middle class could buy a car without financing it? Well, how come they're able to charge you interest when they're already making a profit on the vehicle itself? In other words, and you have so many companies that are operating this way. Again, theft of your labor. Why do I have to pay an additional $4,000 for a $30,000 vehicle? Because I have to pay it over time. Well, you won't sell any cars if you don't allow me to pay it over time. So they take advantage of you when they charge you interest. So my point in bringing this up is Joe's exactly right. But there's too many things in this country that need to change so that you retain the value of your labor, which is being stolen.
Well, that
you.
is a corruption within the system. And no system is perfect. And I'm not saying that the American system is perfect. But what I am saying, it's the best system out there. There is no place on earth that a construction worker makes $80,000 a year in the union.
Tell them about America. Tell them about India.
I've
they don't
said
make
it.
that
I
in
mean,
India.
I've seen India. I've been to India a number of times. I've seen Indian laborers working barefoot, climbing bamboo that's strapped together with rope, doing construction. They probably get a plate of food at the end of the day.
Right.
I mean, an iron worker in Manhattan doing the same job makes $60 an hour.
And good for him.
And God bless him.
Yeah.
So my point is, this is a special place, America. They're trying to take it from you. They're saying different, but undoubtedly it's being taken from you. And no one is going to tell me, from AOC to Bernie Sanders, if you want to work in this country, even if you don't have a college degree. I've said this on the show. My plumber has 4 kids and owns 2 houses. He's my plumber.
I love that guy.
He has a great job. Carl Carbone. I'm just telling you who he is.
We love Carl.
Carl does a great job, has 2 houses and 4 kids. Nowhere in the world does a plumber have that, but he works hard.
Well,
now, I mean,
go ahead.
what I'm basically saying is this. It's not easy. You see, anyone who tells a kid, no matter what you're going to succeed at, whether you own a restaurant, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a CPA, whether you're a plumber, whether you're a mechanic, if you are going to succeed in this country, you are going to have to work your ass off. I'm just telling you this. If I had to give a speech to high school students, that's one of the things I'm going to tell them.
Mm.
No matter what you choose to do, nothing will be given to you. You have to show up every day, and you have to work, and you will fail. And you still have to get up the next day and do it again and basically brush the dust off and pull your shoes on and do it again.
And I would say, because I want to make it clear, I'm not disagreeing with you. I just want labor respected in this country, both on the corporate end, in the private sector,
I would
and I want our labor respected by the government. And the government, I will say this: corporations, that's one thing. Government has no respect for your labor. They'll take every dime you have. So rather than along the lines of what Joe was saying, I don't advocate, and the things he was pointing out and I was pointing out, that just simply requires reform, not revolution.
And we're talking about Tucker Carlson, and again, we got sidetracked, but what happened by the New York Times, that takes doxing to another level.
Well, we'll talk about this real quick, and then we could go into the next story. You know who does have to work? You know who's got to work and roll up their sleeves? The federal government needs to go to work and pass a law that prevents what's happening to Tucker Carlson from happening to you or me or any of you good people out there, particularly all you people who listen to us on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing, and our live chat room, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in, is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. Joe Risinello, those people have to work. This reporter from the New York Times or whoever, the publisher of the New York Times, they need to be told by the federal government, you will not, in the current circumstance, it's the equivalent. All right, we'll end it with this. I think you'll agree with me. It's the equivalent of yelling fire in a crowded movie house. You have people that are out there, and we have videos of them in Missouri, where a bunch of marauders tried to attack the guy McCloskey in Missouri and his wife. They had to go and pull out their firearms, okay? We know what's happening. If you do this to Tucker Carlson, you are endangering his family. That should be a severe violation.
But they don't, and
law.
as he said, they don't care. Why? Because he's effective. You see, Joe Pasillo said something in the beginning of this virus situation. Because listen, let's be real. People have died, particularly people who have medical conditions, particularly the old. This is real. There are people who are vulnerable to this. If you don't agree with that, listen, that's reality. I mean, I've known a number of people in New Jersey. In fact, I went to a funeral mass last week. Someone 77 years old died of COVID. I was there. I was at the mass. It happened. That's not the only person I know that have died as a result of this. Old people are vulnerable. People who have diabetes, heart condition, that's factual. That's science. However, while that's factual, it's also factual that this has become a political football.
Of course.
This is being absolutely leveraged. The Democrats are trying to weaponize this. If you don't believe that, you're not an adult. Just as I'm admitting that people have died, and listen, I respect people. I wear a mask when I go into a store out of respect
I do too.
for other people. Whether I agree with it or not, I still, listen, I respect people. I don't want, even whether the science is there, there's all types of conversations. I still do it out of respect.
Right.
The point is this. The Democrats are using this as a political football.
Right.
They are.
And there's no question about that. We're going to talk for a second about control.
But the point I was going to say is,
but
Joe said this in the beginning of this, that 1 million people, if 1 million bodies lie dead and Donald Trump loses the election, and this is to Tucker Carlson's point, basically how they want to do harm to his family, they wouldn't care.
Wouldn't bat an eyelash.
They wouldn't bat an eyelash. People are dying in Portland. People are being attacked in New York. Police are putting their life, they put their life on the line anyway. Even more so now, they're being assaulted and they don't care. They have one goal and one goal in mind: control.
And power. Well, power and control, yeah. And remember, they would just, what they would fall back on very simply, they would just take the page from Lenin himself, and they would say, well, you can't make an omelet without cracking a few eggs. That's how these people view human life. They have no respect for human life except their own. Okay. In other words, they worry about themselves, but they don't care about anybody else. They have no respect for you. And Joe's right. And I said it, and I will always stand by it. They'll crawl across 1 million dead bodies. In other words, and kick those dead bodies in the face as they're getting to their ultimate goal, which is power. So we have to remember that. We have to remember that. So is it time for a break?
Yeah.
We'll go to a break, and we're gonna continue with Tucker Carlson because again, we're gonna give you one of the reasons why the New York Times wants to do this to him. But we'll pick that up on the other side of the break. You're listening to The Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello on the Crusade Channel. Always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Our live chat room, the only social media out there we're actually socializing in, is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. Please follow Joe and I on Facebook and like, subscribe, and share on YouTube. We got a lot of good stuff on there. Got a recent interview with John Horvat talking about St. Louis, statues of St. Louis in St. Louis, and a lot of other stuff we think you'd be interested in. So we'll see you on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everyone, to The Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. And we are way into the breach on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Our call-in telephone number is 844-527-8723. And our live chat room, the only social media out there we're actually socializing in, is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. So we ended the last segment. And we went off on a little bit of a tangent, but that's one of the things that Joe and I do. This is an everyman conversation. And when you're around your kitchen table, a lot of times conversations organically go in different directions, but they usually start at a place. So we started talking about Tucker Carlson basically being doxxed by the New York Times. It's a disgusting act. The Times needs to be called out on it, and not in a shamed and bullied way. They need the government. We need the government to step in and tell them that them and other news organizations can't do this. But now we want to give you an example of why they hate this guy so much. Because he talks about things that they really infuriates them, that he has the gall to actually bring up something that the Democrats are actually trying to do. Hit it, Joe Resinello.
But Carlson is a very insightful guy. And as Joe said, he is in the culture war. He is a voice to be listened to, if you ask me. It's not a surprise that his show does as well as it does. I mean, he really has, I think, a very keen eye as far as what's going on, and he can articulate that very well. And he talked about something regarding the Senate filibuster. He warns of efforts to end the filibuster. He says no limit to the ways the Democratic Party are going to try to remake this country, and this is one of them. And he basically sheds some light on it. And according to Carlson, if Democrats took control of the U.S. Senate and ended the filibuster, as some of them Democratic members have signaled, they could set up a system of government that would favor the Democrats politically and electorally. This is a quote from Carlson. He says, "For more than 2 centuries, the U.S. Senate has required the support of at least 60 senators before they pass major pieces of legislation. That makes for a cumbersome system. It requires compromise and patience. It delays the passage of laws, I would think on purpose." That's what he's basically saying. Basically, we have folks, particularly we're going to go to Elizabeth Warren. She's commented on this directly, and this is what she said. She said, "When the Democrats have the White House again, and if Mitch McConnell tries to do what he did to President Obama and put small-minded partisanship ahead of solving the massive problems in this country, then we should get rid of the filibuster."
Now catch that, Joe Resinello. She's equating dispensing with the filibuster that, as Tucker Carlson pointed out, has been there for 200 years with small-minded politics. She is the small-minded one. You see, what they're doing is they're making a mistake because they think they always forget, or maybe they don't forget. They act in the here and now. They don't think about down the road because they just, quite frankly, don't want to. They didn't do that with Obamacare, just to give you an example. They didn't think, well, what are the consequences going to be? They feel like if they could get away with it now, what they'll do is they're notorious. Today, they'll be in favor of dispensing with the filibuster. Then when the American people get wind of it and they vote them out in the Senate and goes back to the Republicans are going to say, well, we don't have a filibuster anymore, and now we're in charge. What is Elizabeth Warren going to say then? No, we need a filibuster. There should be well, you people did away with that. And if you think I'm talking out of my you-know-what, a lot of lefties have been, Joe and I have been gaining a lot of notoriety lately, thank the good Lord. But we get is a lot of lefties out there who try to think that we don't back things up or we don't back up what we say. We saw it. We saw it with Merrick Garland. We saw it front and center. We know what they're capable of. So I back up my statements. What do I mean by that? Okay. They wanted Barack Obama. The original rule in the Senate was the Biden rule. You remember that?
Sure.
Okay. In a presidential year, that means in 2016, which is a presidential year, the Senate will not hold hearings on a Supreme Court nominee. That was a Biden rule. Remember Joe Biden? He was in the Senate for 40 freaking years. Okay.
Please,
so that was a Biden rule that all of a sudden Mitch McConnell said in 2016, well, we're not going to hold hearings on Merrick Garland. And what did he say was the reason why? The Biden rule. We have a rule. We're not going to hold hearings for a nominee to the Supreme Court in a presidential year. What did they want to do? No, we need to change it. And Mitch McConnell said, no, it was your rule, and we're not going to change it. But my point in bringing it up is I back up what I say. Today, they'll be in favor of getting rid of the filibuster. When the Republicans gain control, what they're going to do is they're going to be in favor of restoring the filibuster. Everything is the here and now. And my whole point in bringing this up is establishment Republicans and conservative Republicans in the House and Senate, particularly in the whole Congress, have to stop letting them get away with this. Call them out on their BS. Start saying no to them. Okay? Start saying no. That's my point.
Well, Biden also weighed in. He basically said, get this, and I want to point out a particular word. You may catch it as I read it. He says, if Republicans won't obey the newly ascendant Democratic Party, we'll just cut them out of the conversation. Chuck Schumer, of course, is on board with that too. Notice the word obey. Who the hell are you?
Obey.
Did I have to obey you? Joe Biden? I'm going to obey? We have a system. The founding fathers were brilliant. The Constitution is a masterpiece. Is it perfect? No. But it is something that is binding and holds the country together. When you start screwing with it, Joe, you're screwing with one of the greatest civilizations that has ever been created on the face of the earth. I'll tell you something. If Americans allow these guys and ladies to get away with this, you get what you deserve.
Sure do.
And frankly, I'll be honest with you, Joe. I think the dam is eventually going to break. I think, honestly, I hope I'm wrong.
I don't think it's broken. I don't think it's broken yet. I think they've weakened the dam. I think the water is putting pressure on the dam. Okay. You know what the amazing part about it is? When you just made a very good point, right? Who's benefited from this great country? And we say on the show all the time, Joe and I are not blindly loyal to America. We love our country. Our country's got a lot of problems. A lot of it has to do because of the left and the way that they're trying to destroy this country. And they do it through abortion and gay marriage and all of that stuff. But my point is this. The very people that want to destroy this country are the very people that benefited from this country. If Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was born in Venezuela, she'd be poor right now. I mean, poor. Okay.
Well, see, look at Barack Obama.
All right. Barack Obama's another one. He basically he was so set back in life between his father disappearing. He was raised by his grandparents. He moved all over the place. He became president of the United States, and he's currently worth $200 million.
And he was black. And how can a systematically racist country elect a black man?
Right.
I mean, that in and of itself is a contradiction.
Right.
We elected a black man as the president of the United States.
Right.
Once again, undoubtedly there are racists in America. But to say the whole
But America's
system
not
is
a racist
is
country.
insane.
Right, because then Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wouldn't be a congresswoman, okay? In other words, and blacks wouldn't have advanced in this country, okay? They'd still be put down like they were under Jim Crow, and Barack Obama would have never been president. Last time I checked, there's a lot of white people out there voted for Barack Obama. In fact, if they didn't, he couldn't have gotten elected president. Now, America is not systematically racist. We have to stop letting them, we have to say that boldly as the truth.
You can't, in polite company, say what I just said. By the way, with Thomas Sowell?
Tom Sowell.
A black, Harvard-educated economist echoes exactly what I just said. There is no such thing as systematic racism.
Right, but he's an Uncle Tom, according to them. According to them.
He's smarter than them all.
Well, no, smarter than them all collectively.
And again, undoubtedly, there are racists in this country. You're naive if you don't think that. But to say the whole system is systematically racist, I don't think that's simply fair.
But why is that important to what we're talking about with the filibuster? Because the more they try themselves with their media allies, their comrades in the media, to convince you that America is a racist nation, they will try to convince you that the filibuster needs to be done away with so that you give them carte blanche to do whatever they want. And the way they're going to defend themselves is, well, we needed to do this because the Republicans and the rest of the country are racist. So we don't need 60 votes anymore, or else we'll never get anything done. That's why we're bringing up the racism part and other arguments that they're going to make. They will make it seem like your very life is in danger unless you do away with the filibuster and let them remake America the way they want. Can I bring you a point up to you? Antonin Scalia, God rest his soul, and I mean that sincerely, God rest his soul. I do believe he was killed. I know I can't back that up. I believe he was killed, okay? The bottom line is Antonin Scalia testified in front of Congress one time, and he was telling a story to the representative, I forgot who he was talking to, about how he took a trip to France, okay? And one of the French government officials he was in a conversation with asked Nino Scalia, said, you in America, you do things so slowly. If we want to do something here, we voted in a new government in France. They're like Italy. They're on their however many governments later, okay? And Scalia said, it's by design. And Tucker Carlson was making this point in the filibuster. It's by design. We don't want radical change without having to take a breather and compromise and debate and discuss. So if you have, let's say, 53 Democrats, but you need 60, okay? You're going to have to discuss. You're going to have to debate. You're going to have to compromise. And Scalia's point and Tucker Carlson's point in this is by design. We don't want now the House will operate on a simple majority. That's fine. But the House needs the Senate in order to pass legislation and then the president to sign it. That means you don't, like the Stones always say, it might as well be one of the theme songs of our show at the front line with Joe and Joe. You can't always get what you want.
And that's why and I've said this, and why Barack Obama, I called him this from the beginning. This is my term. He was a charismatic ideologue. That is why we should never have an ideological president. Now, that doesn't mean you're wishy-washy. Like, for instance, in politics, I could never compromise on abortion. Right. There are some things that you could agree to disagree with, and there could be no compromise on. However, on things that require prudential judgment, everything should be discussed. Everything should be discussed. There are elements that both parties have good points to make on education, on the border, on economics, on infrastructure, that if we had a healthy and clear thinking and clear-minded society, we would be so much further along and so much better off. That's a conversation for another day. But what I'm saying is, ideologues don't work in government. And Barack Obama was an ideologue. And I'll say this, and I'm going to say, I've said it, and I'm going to say it publicly on this show. He was a failure as a president. He was a failure. He did not get things done because he was an ideologue.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of his 2 terms, he didn't have the House and the Senate. Nothing got done.
Right.
Because he refused. Oh, what would he say? I have the phone, the pen and the phone.
Got the pen and the phone.
Whatever, Barack. All that stuff got washed away the second that Donald Trump came into the office. Part of the reason why he's hell-bent on beating Donald Trump and he's out there because it's ego and pride, and he knows if Trump wins a second term, his presidency it's already in the dustbin. It's going to be ground into nothing.
You know, if we got rid of all the radical social agenda on the moral questions, abortion, gay marriage, and this and that, and Republicans and Democrats, yes, because we're not compromising on that. In other words, those are things that are non-negotiable. But as far as many of the things you said, if they would sit down and stop being ideological, throw away their Marxism. Again, these are blind people or evil people. They want pure political power, so we don't know that they're going to do that. But you're a typical Democrat, okay? You could do great things in this country. Most of the American people on abortion, we're split. That's the way it is, okay? Half the country's pro-life, without exception. The other half of the country is not, or with some exceptions. But the bottom line is we're split on that. I don't think we're split on gay marriage. That was completely imposed on us by the Supreme Court. The vast majority of people, okay, do not agree with gay marriage. But leaving like those radical positions aside, we could do great things in this country if the party in question, the Democrats, okay, were not now completely 100% infiltrated by Marxists who simply, they don't want that compromise you're talking about. They don't want the compromise that Tucker Carlson's talking about where you have to work because you have a filibuster, okay?
And
they don't want.
Case in point, Tim Scott with police reform.
Right.
Black, he's a Republican, but his bill was a moderate bill.
Right.
Many compromises went into that bill. Look it up, read it. It was voted. Not one Democrat voted for it.
Right.
You know, instead of, how about, let's talk, we're going to talk Chutes and Ladders and Candyland for a moment, because this is never going to happen, ever. But if you really cared about what happened to George Floyd, you would have passed that bill.
Right.
You would have gotten police reform, and there'd be no need to burn cities. But you do have a need to burn cities because you are trying to create chaos with the hope that it tarnishes Donald Trump and that he loses the election. I only wish that a large swath of the Democrats who still will vote for Joe Biden could admit that.
Right.
Or see it, because it's true. And I'm telling you it's true. I am telling you. I believe that to my core because it is true. You see, if you cared about George Floyd, you would have passed that bill. Tim Scott had a fantastic speech, right, that he gave when that bill. He was, and he's admitted that he has felt the evil arm of prejudice in his life growing up in South Carolina as a poor man. And he put all his effort into that. Not one Democrat voted for it because it's not about the people. It's not about protecting people like George Floyd. Oh, they'll say it is. But Tim Scott put his best out there to get that through. Not having it because we want Donald Trump out of office. The hell with the American people.
And to hell with Tim Scott. See, that's their inherent racism. Well, he's just a dumb Uncle Tom. They probably didn't use the word Uncle Tom. They probably used the word that you're not supposed to use because that's the way the Democrats are. We all know, everybody's put it out there now. Joe and I said it a long time ago. We didn't need Dinesh D'Souza to say it. We've always known that the Democrat Party was a racist party. We grew up in Newark. We see what they've done to black people in the city of Newark. Okay, but it didn't matter. He was just a dumb Uncle Tom to them. We don't have to listen. That didn't judge the bill, didn't judge the measures, like you said, that would have been effective, that would have addressed many of the issues that led up to the murder of George Floyd. Giving compromise, talk about compromise. Okay, compromising, letting the Democrats have input. They just, just totally dismissed it because they're racist. They are a racist party. Because if Black Lives really did matter, they would have
passed that bill.
They would have listened to Tim Scott. What is he? Not an authentic black man? Or is it like Joe Biden said, if you're a Republican or you're thinking about voting for Trump and you're black, you're not really black? What a racist statement. Yet Orange Man is the racist? Biden made a blatantly racist statement when he said that. Nobody called him out on it.
Press gives him a pass. Typical.
Right.
That's why the press, and we're going to get into this in our next segment, is the enemy of the people.
They are.
The press is the enemy of the American people.
Because they hate your guts. Just like we mentioned the Democrat Party. Well, their communications arm is the mainstream media. Just like their military arm right now is Antifa and Black Lives Matter. They have all the apparatus in place, the structures in place. So their communications people are all in the media. And they go out there and they just say whatever the hell it is they want. But the New York Times aren't going to dox them, but they're certainly going to dox Tucker Carlson when all he's doing is he's just a major league thorn in their side.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about CNN, and they sound the alarm. Very interesting. This is coming from CNN. Please keep this in mind. This isn't coming from me. CNN says BLM, Black Lives Matter, fails to activate black vote for Joe Biden as Donald Trump unexpectedly holds firm. Now, this is CNN saying this. Harry Eaton of CNN, this is what he said. Joe Biden's advantage over Trump with black voters is currently smaller than Hillary Clinton's was. He breaks it down. The death of George Floyd and subsequent protests reshaped the presidential race. It brought race relations and racism and police brutality to the forefront. In that time, former Vice President Joe Biden's advantage over Trump expanded from about 6 points to 10 points. Interesting, however, Trump continues to do something perhaps unexpectedly among black voters, hold his own against Biden relative to many people's expectations. But if the race for president tightens, this is important, pay attention, Trump's small gain with black voters could make a difference. It could cost Biden 0.5 points nationally on the whole compared to where Clinton ended up. That may not seem like a lot, though it could make the difference in a close election. Me and Joe were talking about this beforehand. States like Michigan and Pennsylvania that have a large black voting bloc in Detroit and in Philadelphia, if they shift, and it's a close race in those states, and it probably will be a close race in those states, President Trump wins that state.
Because you know what happens then? We come up with a new slogan, Black Votes Matter. And then those black votes that Biden is not going to get and that Trump may get, that could swing Pennsylvania.
And to my larger point, what happened to George Floyd was horrible. But when it happened, they knew this, and they're exploiting it.
Yeah.
And here's the proof. CNN is hardly the first to notice Biden's serious problem in the black community. USA Today earlier in July published a feature piece headlined, "Young Black Voters Say They Aren't Enthusiastic About Joe Biden's Presidency." Back in April, McClatchy's Alex Rotary published his own story detailing how the Democrats are worried, this is April, about Trump's strength with young black men and women and Hispanic voters. They know this.
You hear that noise? You hear that noise? That's them quaking in their boots.
They know this. And what CNN is saying now is this movement is not moving the meter, particularly among young black Americans.
Your older African Americans are going to do what, let's say, the older Italians or the older Irish would do. Okay, those who are still in the Democrat Party, they're going to vote Democrat. But look at what we're going to come up on a break in a minute or two. But let's just say, look at what, like we mentioned Kanye earlier, okay? But it's not just Kanye. you have you got Charlemagne the God, right? I hate calling him that because
It makes me twitch.
Right, makes me twitch.
I agree.
But Charlemagne, you have Kanye, you have Terrence K. Williams, you have all these young black. I wouldn't even call them conservatives so much, even though they are conservative, but they've defected. They're defectors. What they are is they're slaves who ran away. You can't say it like that in polite company, like Joe said, but they'll say it themselves. They ran off the plantation of the Democrat Party, okay? And they are appealing to young black Americans because what are they doing? They're the same thing that we're trying to do with a lot of Catholics who are, let's say, voting for the Democrats, raising their consciousness to question some of the things that are being proposed that are not good for you.
Particularly charter schools in inner cities.
That's one of the biggest things that can happen is school choice, competition within the school system. It's primarily in the inner city. It's single moms who are struggling beyond belief. They want better schools for their children.
And they deserve them.
Okay? They deserve them. They didn't listen to Planned Parenthood and kill their child. They brought their children into the world, and now what they want is they want a good education system. So, I mean, and it's not too much to ask, but when you're coming to the Democrats and their union buddies, it's way too much to ask. But let's leave it there right now. We're going to take a break for just a couple minutes. You're listening to The Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello, way in the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Our live chat room, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in, is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. Please like, follow, share, subscribe, hit the little bell with Joe and I at The Frontline with Joe and Joe on Facebook and YouTube. If you're feeling generous and you want to support our efforts, you could go on GoFundMe and you'll find Support The Frontline with Joe and Joe. Drop in a couple bucks. As always, we ask you to keep us in your prayers. So we're going to pick up the conversation on the other side of the break.
Good.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. And thank you for joining us in the breach on the Crusade channel. Always on, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Our call-in telephone number is 844-527-8723. And our live chat room, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in, is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. So the first two segments were kind of weighty. So I hope you don't mind, Joe Resinello. Let's have a little fun. You want to have a little bit of fun? But it's kind of having a little fun at the same time, okay? So we are going to go to cancel culture / Major League Baseball. So where are we going, Joe Resinello?
Well, I want to let's give our good listeners a complete guide to canceling every team in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, because remember, names have to be changed, right? So what was it? K-Chalk, right? In the Federalist. So he came up. Now his list is exhaustive. He went through all the teams in Major League Baseball. We're going to highlight some of the better ones. We think the good people on the Crusade channel will probably agree that these are valid reasons why these names need to be changed.
But also, then we're going to go into a broader discussion about sports because I think it's out of control. We're going to touch on a quote from Charles Barkley. I think he really put a finer point on the discussion, and I think it'll spark a good discussion between Joe and I. But why stop with the Cleveland Indians and the Texas Rangers? When you think about it, every single team in Major League Baseball is irredeemably offensive.
In other words, they're deplorable.
Let's go down the list for a couple. Let me share them with you. The Red Sox. How can Sox be offensive, you ask? Well, did you know that the team stole its name from a colored team that played in Norfolk, Virginia in the 1880s? Cancel them.
Cancel them because that is cultural appropriation. And by the way, we're not using the word colored. They did. It's in air quotes.
The Houston Astros, honoring our nation's amazing space program, seems all well and good until you remember the movie Hidden Figures, which exposed the history of racism at NASA. Cancel them too.
And also because it's not being very kind to the Jetsons dog.
Well, there it is.
There it is. Can I mention one?
Go for it.
Chicago White Sox. This one should be easy. Okay. In other words, they got rid of the red. They made the Redskins change it. The White Sox need to change. Their socks are white. So it's obvious that it's a connection to white privilege, okay, and oppression. And don't even, and according to Mr. Chalk, don't even consider changing the name to Black Sox. In other words, to say if you wanted to appease Black Lives Matter, because Black Sox implies the corrupt Chicago White Sox. When was it? The 1919 fixing of the World Series. So White Sox, that's out.
Oakland Athletics. It's amazing that in 2020 we could have a mascot so explicitly prejudiced against non-athletic people. The dreams of countless plump children have been shattered by this name.
This name. Now, let's get this straight. Okay, I'm 52 years old. Okay, I grew up at a time when the Oakland Athletics won 3 national championships in a row, and I was a plump kid. I'm being honest, okay? My mother, I tell the story all the time. She hates when I tell the story. I was a nice little skinny kid, all right, when I was real small, okay? And I was nice and wiry and everything else. And my mother, because she was an Italian mother, thought I wasn't fat enough. So she prayed to God, and she goes, Mom, Jesus Christ, he's got no ass. He's got like she was saying. So what happened? A year later, I became the plump kid, okay? And I say this all to say I wasn't offended by the Oakland Athletics, but I guess your current crop of plump kids, they're going to be offended. Ergo, the Athletics, canceled.
But Charles Barkley, I think, put a finer point on all this craziness. As we all know, Charles Barkley, great NBA, star, a very outspoken guy. He's an announcer, but he's also a fearless guy. Not just as a player, but I found in a lot of things, he's not afraid to speak his mind.
Mm-hmm.
This is what he had to say. He said, sports is becoming a woke circus with no real results. Sports used to be where fans can go and get away from reality. And then he continues. He says, and as fans financially struggle during this virus pandemic, they don't want to see a bunch of rich people constantly talking about social justice issues. It's going to be very interesting to see how the public reacts. I think that this is a financial disaster for the NBA, for the NFL, and for Major League Baseball.
Can I ask you a question? I know this might seem a little far-fetched. It might seem far-fetched to all you good people listening to us on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. There is one aspect of this that I think is being overlooked. And I thought about this about sports, because you say to yourself, it can't possibly be in their financial interest to do this, right? Whether you're talking about the NBA, whether you're talking about Major League Baseball, certainly the NFL. Roger Goodell is a cultural warrior. He's our enemy. I think we could agree on that. People overlook one thing. You say, well, why would they do this? Because it will lead to lower ratings, lower revenues, perhaps even down the road, the destruction of these leagues. And then I thought in my mind, well, maybe that's what they want. Remember, sports, particularly in America, they represent manliness. Okay, just quite frankly, women's sports, they don't have the popularity, even amongst women, that men's sports do. And in our current, culturally Marxist environment that we live in, sports in and of themselves represent toxic masculinity. So my point in bringing this up is, and again, it's more of a question than it is a comment, is would you think that many of these people who have infiltrated professional sports want the destruction of those sports?
See,
is that a valid question?
I mean, with the way that, men are portrayed in the culture, it's a question to be asked. Personally, I think people like Roger Goodell, they're out of touch. I think they're just out of touch with their clients. This is a loser. Roger Goodell makes $40 million a year and wants to continue to make $40 million a year. He wants to stay rich. I think he's out of touch. I think these players are also out of touch with the people that pay money for their tickets and buy their jerseys, and they're going to pay. This is a business. The NFL is a business. Don't think for a moment that these owners care about these men that play football for them.
But Joe, they're not operating as a business. They should be neutral on these things.
I think that's a mistake.
Okay.
I think that's their mistake. They are going to go to the cleaners. Listen, managing directors at Goldman Sachs who are metrosexual, that live in Brooklyn aren't going to Jet games. It's the guy that works for PSE&G. It's the cop.
Right. The fireman.
It's the fireman.
Fireman Ed.
Bingo.
New York
That's
Jets.
who's going. I don't know about, whoever's hearing my voice where you live, but I'm talking about, I'm a Jet fan. That's who are going to Jet games. Not some metrosexual coming out of Hoboken. They're not spending money, dropping $200 on a Sunday. They don't know who their clients are, and they're going to pay.
Well, let's hope they do.
I hope they do too, because I'm not watching it. I'm done.
Well,
with
as it is
all of
right now, okay, we're at the end of July. As it is right now at this moment, Joe and I are both avid Jets fans. Okay, I might be a little bit more fanatical. Okay, but we both love the New York Jets. We always have. Okay, we've been Jet fans our whole lives. I do not intend to watch the New York Jets. And we have our best quarterback prospect that we've had in a very long time in Sam Darnold, and we have a good team. I do not intend to watch the New York Jets this year if, in fact, the NFL in general and the Jets don't change, because the Jets are making certain statements, too, now about racism and stuff like that, that I don't abide. I don't tune into the Jets to watch all these players who I love, like Jamal Adams and Sam Darnold, okay? But my thing is this, fellas, listen, I love you because you worked hard and you play football very, very well. You start talking about culture and politics, go get a podcast. That's what Joe and I've done. We don't bring the front line with Joe and Joe into our workplace, okay? Why are we are there to perform a job for our bosses, and Jamal Adams and Sam Darnold and the rest of them, they're there to perform a job for the organization and to have a successful football team. Please remember like Joe said, remember your audience. I don't care if you say conservative things. I don't want you to say anything political or cultural. Okay? I don't. I want you to just play football. Do what you do best.
And I'm going to give you a case in point. As you know, Joe and I are from New Jersey, if you couldn't guess by the way we speak. But, New Jersey loves Bruce Springsteen. Favorite son of New Jersey.
I love the boss.
When he plays concerts in New Jersey at arenas, days packed, could be 20 concerts. I went to one, I've seen him twice. I went to one maybe about 10 years ago in the Meadowlands in New Jersey, near where we live. And as we all know, his politics are way to the left. And this is in New Jersey. This is why I'm saying out of touch. He started in between sets going on a political rant. He was booed. Bruce Springsteen, I was at the concert, was booed. People were like, just play music. It's the same thing. You see, they've lost perspective on who their audience is and what they do.
They don't seem to care anymore.
They think they're bigger than they are. LeBron James, listen, you're a great basketball player. I could care less what you have to say when it comes to politics. Bruce Springsteen, you write great songs. You're an entertaining guy. I could care less. And when I spend $100 to hear you in a concert, I am not interested in your political opinions.
My best friend was telling me, and my best friend and I, we don't agree on everything politically and all that, or religiously. All right, we respect one another. He's fanatical Bruce Springsteen fan, and along the lines, just to tell you a quick story. This was back when Obamacare was being debated and everything else, and Springsteen was calling it this blood feud over health care, which was just another radical way of putting it. It wasn't a blood feud. It was a matter of people who were disagreeing with the government takeover of our healthcare system. He started to go into it, but it was one of those times at a Springsteen concert where it's very quiet, because he was probably going to go into one of his slower songs. Very quiet. My friend had very good seats, so you could hear people from your seat. You could hear it on the stage. Springsteen he mentioned Obamacare. My best friend, who's not a partisan political guy, he just said, "Oh, come on, man, get back to the music." Springsteen heard him. He went, now this is my friend telling me, and he wouldn't lie about this. My friend said, Springsteen went, wow, okay, and went into the song. Now, my friend's not a rabid right-wing Republican conservative, okay? He just basically said what you said. Come on, man, play the song and leave the politics alone. because he should know his role. We have to know our roles.
Absolutely.
I can't go into my job and do what I do at the front line with Joe and Joe. Most people would tell me to beat it, even if they agreed with me, to be like, Joe, we're at work. We got to make money. What are you doing? Same thing in your job.
Well, that's just basic respect, because there are lines. And like you said, and here's the thing, you are free to your opinion. I am not like the intolerant left. If you want to have your opinion, you're free to have. I'm not going to dox you. I have no problem with you having whatever opinions you have. That's what makes America great.
Right.
However, if I spend my hard-earned money to see you sing a song, to play baseball, to play basketball, to play football, and I have to sit there and hear this nonsense, as Charles Barkley said, this has turned into a circus, and I'm not going to do it.
Right.
You see, they think it's sadly that we're just going to, the sheeple will just continue to put money in the basket. And if you do, shame on you. You see, I'm going to tell you this, and we've said this in previous segments today, and I'm going to say it again and again and again and again and again because it's important. People don't feel shame anymore for doing what's wrong. They don't blush with shame.
Right.
The idea of right and wrong is thrown out. I'm going to tell you, trust me, I work in corporate America. I know what moves the needle. Money. You control people by their pocketbook. Don't give them a dime.
Right.
And it'll stop. It will stop as fast as you can blink an eye. If they cannot pay LeBron James, it's basic supply and demand economics.
Exactly.
If you cannot pay LeBron James's salary, how do you think he makes the money he makes? He makes it from you.
Right.
If he cannot get paid by his team, they will change their tune in a minute.
Well, those people that you described at the Bruce Springsteen concert who started booing him, he doesn't care. You already bought the ticket. You already bought the ticket. The point is to stay away. You know what they're about. Okay? You know what they're going to do. They're not going to leave politics out of anything. Okay? Now, the people that agree with them, let them go. But when half the arena or half the stadium is empty, okay, and it starts costing them money, they say, well, why am I not filling the place? Because you're insulting your audience. Born to Run is not a conservative or a liberal song. It's just a good song. Thunder Road is not a conservative or liberal song. It's just a good song. Same with Promised Land, and same with all Bruce Springsteen albums and singles. Okay? Why do you have to make it political? Because now I keep my money in my pocket. That's it. That's it. Just keep my money in my pocket.
And I encourage all the good listeners on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online, to do the same. You see, that's how you control the narrative.
That's right.
It's what unions do, right? Unions basically tell a corporation, listen, you are going to pay my people. You think they pay people? You think they pay iron workers in New York City $60 an hour because they like them? They despise them. And whoever's building that building curses when he signs the check. But he knows he has to. Why? Because the union says we won't do the job unless you do this. It's called leverage. That's how you move the needle. People don't do things out of the goodness of their heart. That's what a Christian society should do. But sadly, we're not in heaven, and sadly, America doesn't operate that way. It probably never did.
But it should in the future.
It should.
It
No,
should.
but
That's
it
one of
should.
the reasons why we are here and others to try to say, again, we're not revolutionaries. I don't want to overthrow the United States government. I don't want to overthrow our economic system. Reforms are definitely needed to make this country a better place.
But
John Horvat wrote a book,
Absolutely.
Return to Order, and get back to some semblance of a Christian order in America, which will benefit everybody, not just Christians. Okay. And do away with all this chaos.
But you're also, listen, but at the same time, we're in the world, we're not of the world. You have to survive in the world, and you have to be a realist, and you have to be a purist. We're not in heaven. It's never going to be heaven. The world will never be heaven. Could we make improvements? Should we strive for perfection? Absolutely. But the reality is this. There are bad people on this earth. That's why there are jails. That's why there are cops. And you have to deal with them. You have to deal with bad people. That's sadly in some circles of even the Catholic Church. I see it with some young people. Listen, I'm going to raise my kids Catholic. I pray the rosary with them. We go take them to church. I like to think I demonstrate a Catholic Christian ethic in my house, sharing, goodness, being polite,
Being responsible.
respectful. However, not everyone's going to play that way with you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be in the world and you have to deal with all types of people. And sometimes I think it's almost being unrealistic. And why do I bring this up? Leverage. You're in a fight. You're in a war. There's leverage. You're defending your own. You're defending your home. You're defending your paycheck. You're defending your job. You have to use intelligence. You have to be shrewd. You have to swim in the pool to survive. There is no utopia. Now, do you do it like a Christian? Absolutely. But you also have to fight when someone's fighting you. And why do I bring this up? Boycotting money. I choose to spend my money the way I want to choose to spend it.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not supporting Bruce Springsteen. I am not supporting the NFL. I am not supporting Major League Baseball because I don't want to hear it. And Charles Barkley is spot on. He actually gets it. He is basically saying, oh, we'll see how the reaction is. He gets it.
Right.
And you should do the same thing.
Right.
Screw you. I'm not giving you my hard-earned money so I could hear your nonsense. People spend money to listen to Joe and I on this station. There are many people that would say, I will never listen to them. You're free to do so. You're free to do so. That's what makes America great, good, whatever. Go listen to Rachel Maddow.
Go ahead.
And fill your head with crap. But what I am saying is I'm free to do what I want to do with my money, and there is no way that I'm supporting this nonsense. With my hard-earned money, I work too hard.
I agree. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, and Way in the Breach on the Crusade channel. Always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com. So in the course of that conversation, we brought up Catholicism. Okay. Well, guess who else is bringing up Catholicism? Here's a shocker. Joe Biden.
This story is ridiculous.
This story is so ridiculous because it shows you how the media operates, their double standards, their hypocrisy, their duplicitousness, and just overall the way they operate. Just listen to this disgusting story.
The liberal media is calling Joe Biden a devout Catholic.
Right.
But obviously we know that Joe Biden and the Democratic Party support abortion on demand. This is factual.
Up to the moment of birth.
Absolutely factual. This is not our assumption or our assertion. This is factual. The Associated Press headlined Biden. This is what they said. Biden bid touts faith, courts even religious conservatives. Let me just read a couple things and then we're going to have a discussion because I think this is absolutely and utterly ridiculous. Because either they're taking you for a fool or they're playing you, which is taking you for a fool. Reporters Elena Shore and Jack Jenkins insisted Joe Biden is a different kind of foe than Trump has faced before, one who makes faith a central part of his persona, often literally wearing it on his sleeve. They played up, this is someone from the Associated Press, they played up Biden carrying a rosary that belonged to his late son, Beau, into the Democratic debate. The deputy political director, John McCarthy, declared Biden's identity as a very devout Catholic and person of deep faith is baked into the core messaging and core functions of the campaign.
I have a question.
These people high?
They're smoking crack, abortion up until the moment of birth, forcing taxpayers to pay for it, reversing every regulation that Donald Trump put into place so that less babies die in the womb. And they're calling this guy a devout Catholic. And by the way, I thought that that's not supposed to count for people.
Let's break it down. Some of Biden's quote-unquote Catholic ideas, and then I think we could have a direction in many different basic.
Oh, we could go on for days about this one.
There's no mention by the Associated Press of Biden's current supporting position on abortion on demand, as Joe said, including forcing devout Christians into funding it with their taxpayer dollars.
Now, here's a question I got to ask you. I'm sorry, Joe. I'm sorry. But here's a question I got to ask you. You're using government power to coerce a bunch of nuns, old nuns, who take care of old, sick people who are indigent and about to die. That's what these nuns do. That's what the Little Sisters of the Poor do. They are decidedly Catholic. And Biden is a devout Catholic when he wants to pick on them, abuse them. And even though the Supreme Court just ruled in their favor, he is promising to force them to provide for contraception in their insurance plans for their employees, or he'll drag them into court again. So do me a favor, spare me this lie. And all Catholics better get this through their head. I will never say a person's not a Catholic without knowing. In Biden's case, we do know, based on the positions he takes, not as a politician, as a human effing being, okay? This guy is a disgusting man, and he is the opposite of a practicing Catholic, okay? And I am not being judgmental wrongly. He is the opposite of a practicing Catholic.
Or that he's been endorsed by Planned Parenthood, which shamelessly said that they backed Biden because this is literally a life and death election.
Right. Death, Joe Biden. Life, Donald Trump. Yeah, I agree with Planned Parenthood. Just which one supports death, which one supports life.
There's no mention by the Associated Press of Biden pressuring Obama, the Catholic pressuring Obama into advocating for same-sex marriages, or that Biden presided over a gay wedding in 2016, drawing a rebuke from the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. Now, clearly, the media is trying to pass off this badly disguised campaign pamphlet as real news. Clearly, they're trying to tap in to the Catholic vote, saying he's Catholic. First of all, any serious Catholic, any serious evangelical sees right through this. It's nonsense. It's like trying to get your religious news from the New York Times. I always tell that to people. Don't read about the Catholic Church in the New York Times. You're never going to get a fair shake.
Right.
But this is just utter and absolute nonsense. It also plays into something else, and we can explore this conversation. How little some Catholics know what the church teaches.
Yeah.
And this is the angle they're going on, and they're counting on it. You see, they're not counting on the daily communicant. They're not counting on the person that prays the rosary every day. They've lost them. They're not counting on the evangelical, the conservative evangelical. They're counting on the lukewarm. And sadly, there's a lot of you out there. And sadly, that's got to change.
We're going to come up on a break in about 20 seconds. Let me say this, though, and then we're going to pick this up on the other side of the break. Even though if we don't get to our other conversations, we have to stick on important topics when we're in the breach on them. Remember why they're doing this. There's always, everything they do usually is a reaction to something. Catholic, particularly Catholic social media, is hammering the social media platforms for the need to vote for Donald Trump. And that's why they feel the need to do this, because you got a lot of Catholics, like you said, that might be low information, but they listen to Taylor Marshall or Jesse Romero or Mike Church, and they turn around and they say, oh, wow, I didn't know that. And they start to question whether or not they're going to vote for Biden. Okay, but we'll pick that up on the other side of the break. You're listening to The Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Restanello, way in the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Our call-in telephone number, 844-527-8723. And our live chat room, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in, is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. So, yeah, we'll pick this up. I think it's an important conversation to have. So we'll see you all on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. And we thank you once again for joining us way into the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Our live chat room, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in, is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. Follow Joe and I on Facebook and YouTube at the front line with Joe and Joe, and do all that fun stuff. Like, subscribe, share, all that. So yeah, let's get back to this real quick. Very important, Joe. I think if you look particularly in the last year or so, as the onslaught against Donald Trump has gone more and more shrill, okay, coming from the left, major figures in Catholic media have been out there, okay, and they're successful. See, this is the thing. They're successful in convincing not just Catholics, by the way. A lot of Protestants listen to Catholics. They do. If you're saying something right, people will listen, okay? I hope a lot of our separated brothers and sisters will listen to us too, okay? But they're out there and they're making very good points about why it is not only morally acceptable to vote for Donald Trump, it's desirable, and it's morally unacceptable to vote for Joe Biden or right now any Democrat, okay? Because of what that party represents. That's why I think they're doing this. I think this is an example of the Democrat apparatus. This is their media allies going out there to push a narrative that they know is a lie.
Once again,
they know it's a lie.
It's a lie. You see, this is something they're cloaking their agenda. You see, that's what the devil does, by the way. And the devil is real. That's why Mike calls them the Democrats. They're cloaking their agenda. They're trying to fool you. The truth, when you speak the truth, you don't have to hide.
No.
You don't have to hide. I always say, I'm a pretty, straight up and down the line guy. I always kind of have been. And I have my taxes. I work for, a corporation. I don't have a business, and everything I basically, do is reported. If someone came to me and said, Joe, I want to see your taxes, 10 years, I'd say, go look at them. I don't care. Go look at them. I didn't do anything wrong. Look at them. Why? Because I didn't do anything wrong. You see, the point I'm trying to make is when you lie, you're hiding something.
Right.
And they're hiding something. It's the same thing when they try to pitch that Joe Biden is a centralist or a moderate. He is not.
Right.
He is not. Maybe at one time he was more towards the middle. But right now, the Democratic Party would not permit any candidate, never mind Joe Biden, from being in the middle. And they know that that's a loser, my friends, and it is. And why could you say that, Joe Resinello? Well, I'll tell you why. Bernie Sanders lost to Joe Biden because the Democrat that sits on the bus across the country, the normal guy, is not interested in Bernie Sanders. That's why he lost to Joe Biden, who has one foot in the grave. He's a beat candidate. Let's be honest. If this is the best you have, you don't have much.
Well, don't they know that? I mean, look at all the tactics that they're trying to employ to, like we said earlier, and Michael Voris was the first one who phrased it this way. So I'm borrowing from him when he said they're trying to drag Biden across the finish line. This is just part of their tactics, trying to get people out there. Look, they know that as it stands right now, the Democrats, Biden will probably lose the Catholic vote. And my understanding is that in recent memory, there hasn't been a president who was elected president that did not get the majority of the Catholic vote, whether it was 51% or 65%. Obama got the Catholic vote. Bush got the Catholic vote. Trump got the Catholic vote. Papa Bush, Clinton. In other words, they all got the Catholic vote. They're trying to nibble around the edges to pick off Catholics who, God bless them, they might be a little less informed. Maybe they don't like Donald Trump. Maybe they're lukewarm about him, okay? But they come from Democrat families, Italian, Irish, German, Polish. They say, I could vote Democrat, but they don't know. But now in the face of social media and all the traditional Catholics out there saying, look, man, abortion is not under prudential judgment, okay? Nor is gay marriage. Nor is contraception, for that matter, by
Absolutely.
the way, okay? But get it straight. You vote for these people, even if you're moderately pro-choice, which Joe and I don't agree with, and the Catholic Church doesn't agree with. These people support abortion on demand up till the moment of birth. That's what you're voting for, and it's starting to resonate. It's starting to get through. And the Democrats see that majority of the Catholic vote slipping through their fingers. And what do? They get the Associated Press and all their comrades in the media to say, Joe Biden is a devout Catholic.
And that's another.
And Trump is a disgusting
And that's
person.
another reason why they don't want to debate. This is such a loser. This is a loser with independence. This is a loser with any rational human being. Do you know that this was said on The View? I think it was McCain's daughter.
Ugh.
But she said this. I think she said something like over 80% of America is against third trimester abortion.
Well, that's a fact. We wish 80% of Americans were against abortion.
But my point is,
that's a loser.
That's their platform.
Right.
You see, the abortion platform is so radical that it makes people want to regurgitate. It's disgusting. It's barbaric. And Joe Biden can't lie around it. If he does, it's almost laughable. He's damned if he does, and if he's damned if he doesn't. As Joe said, if he sat on that stage and Joe and Donald Trump said, Joe, you're for third trimester abortion. And if Joe's response is, that's a bunch of malarkey, Donald, he's a loser because his party will sink him. But if then he says he's for third trimester abortions, he's a loser.
You're right, because all those people in this country that, and by the way, we covered it last week, abortion for pro-life people, for 25% of the electorate, abortion for pro-life people is the primary issue for why they vote. And that vastly outnumbers Democrats. Democrats who are pro-abortion, let's say, where it's the primary issue. Okay, that says a lot. That gives Trump the advantage here, if you look at it politically, on the abortion issue. Trump says, I'm pro-life, just like half the country, and I'm certainly against third trimester abortions, like 80% of the country, and that's going to resonate with those 25% of the electorate that say that is their primary issue. Whereas it's a loser, like you said, all the way around for Biden. It's a loser. The unenthusiastic leftist that you described earlier when it comes to Biden, if he backtracks on abortion on demand up till the moment of birth, that person doesn't go out and vote for him. Doesn't go out and vote for him on election day. So listen, when the Democrats are in a position where it's lose-lose, nothing makes Joe and I happy. We get very happy when they're in that position because Republicans have been in that position for a very long time. So when they have to go through it, good, you deserve it.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about Planned Parenthood. There's some good news. Planned Parenthood in New York removed the Margaret Sanger name from their flagship abortion clinic. They announced this last week, and basically, as we all know, Margaret Sanger is a eugenicist. What does that mean? She basically believes, and she's the founder of the organization, that certain people shouldn't basically reproduce. Certain segments of society. This is well documented. And this is funny. I find it interesting that they're now taking her name off this now. You attack Christopher Columbus first and you don't attack Margaret Sanger.
Right. We've
been saying this for a long time, Joe and I. And Barack Obama, we've covered this on previous shows, actually considered, this is how either he takes you for a fool. Actually, that's the only way. Or he doesn't know himself, but I think he's just taking you for a fool, the American people. He considered her putting her name, her face, on one of the bills.
Right.
This is a fact.
Right.
And it was the black pastors that spoke out against it in the South. You see,
and they said, absolutely not.
This woman is on the record. She actually is a racist.
Right.
And this is the last of the line that they're conceding the fact that they want to take her name off. There's a street sign, and they want to take her name off the flagship abortion clinic in Manhattan, where Joe goes and protests once a month on first Saturdays.
So I did a video down there a couple of weeks ago, or the first Saturday of last month, or this current month. We're in July, and basically made that point because others who are in the pro-life movement, who go down there every day, not just every week or once a month, okay, they're the real frontline people in that fight. They have gotten a number of turnarounds. Turnaround means a woman who's walking into Planned Parenthood and literally turns around and does not have the abortion. That is a success, a victory when that happens for the pro-life witnesses that are out there. Many times I've been told they have gotten these turnarounds amongst young Black and Hispanic women, okay, who once they realize and they point to the sign that says Margaret Sanger Square, and then they point to the Planned Parenthood sign on the building and say that racist eugenicist founded that place that you're going to walk into right now because they're convincing you to kill your baby. And they're doing so because they don't want more Black and brown people in the world. They've gotten many, many turnarounds simply by pointing out that that woman, was a racist, okay, and a eugenicist. So that's number one. Number two, this originally when I saw this story, and I had gotten an email from it prior to seeing the story, I did a video. I wanted to organize an effort to go down there and take down that statue. I wanted to do to them what they've been doing to Columbus statues. Now, a good priest talked me out of that. Let's be clear. And many of you know, and Father Stephen Ibarato said, Joe, not the way to go about it. And I listened. It's called obedience. A good man, a good priest told me, Joe, that's not the way to do it. Then what happened was then they turned around and they said they're taking it down. Now, is it to their credit? No, because Planned Parenthood is still a racist organization. Start closing up shop in the Black and Hispanic community, then maybe I'll take you seriously. Okay, but you're not going to because you're an inherently racist organization. And your bread is buttered in minority communities.
Some people will claim otherwise, that she wasn't a eugenicist. There are people who still believe that to this day. Do you know that about 6 months ago, I talked about this on a show, I'll repeat it. I got into a conversation with someone at work. He's very well-to-do guy. He's an engineer, and he was talking about abortion. And he has daughters, and we got into a little bit of an abortion conversation. I shouldn't do this, but sometimes it happens. Anyway, do you know that he lives in a very affluent town in New Jersey? That he said to me, point blank, he said this. He said, abortion basically regulates the population of poor minorities who can't take care of their children and who would be basically thrown into a life of crime. And that's one of the reasons why he supports it. He actually said that to me.
That is such that is
I swear.
Now, Joe and I don't like to throw around the word racist because that's what the left does. That is a profoundly racist statement.
Is disgusting. And I'm going to tell you this, because, I'm not the type of guy, I'm not running to HR. That's not my deal. And we were having a conversation. I was utterly and absolutely flabbergasted by that statement, said publicly. Why I say that, if we heard what people say behind closed doors, I always say this to my wife, you don't even realize the type of conversations that people have behind closed doors when it comes to race, when it comes to anti-Catholicism, when it comes to all types of nefarious subjects, satanic behavior, how people behave and actually think and speak at their own kitchen table. This gentleman actually just said it. He said that. Margaret Sanger, this is what she's about. There are people who think that to this day.
And I want to just chime in, and then we're going to go to our next story.
Yeah, sure.
I do want to mention, though, there was a number of comments that were made by pro-life leadership, but I do want to mention, many of you know who she is, Marjorie Dannenfelser, and she's the president of Susan B. Anthony List. I liked a couple things that she had to say in particular. She said Planned Parenthood's, quote, next step is recognizing that Margaret Sanger's racist legacy continues today as abortion continues to disproportionately impact minority communities, especially the Black community. And she ends with this. She called on, now I would love this. This would be a major defeat for them. Okay. She called on Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton to, quote, disavow and return their Planned Parenthood Margaret Sanger awards immediately. Closed quote.
Where's the New York Times? Where's Black Lives Matter? Where's the media? Basically screaming from the rooftops that they accepted an award from a known racist, named after a known racist. Dude, Hillary Clinton speaks about Margaret Sanger like she was the next greatest thing.
She talks about her the way Catholics talk about the Blessed Virgin Mary. And that's probably not an exaggeration.
I mean, not for nothing. That just shows not only the hypocrisy, it shows a lack, frankly, of information amongst the quote unquote woke people out there.
Or they don't care.
They don't. Actually, you're right, Joe.
Or
they don't care.
Right.
Because it's all about get rid of Trump. You see, too much of that crap. We covered that last week. It's not a good enough reason to vote for Joe Biden just because you don't like somebody. This isn't the third grade. We're not playing kickball at recess.
Right.
And
you don't get to take your ball and go home.
I mean, for crying out loud.
How much did you want to beat the crap out of the kid who said who didn't get his way? He said, "Well, it's my ball, and if I don't get my way, I'm taking my ball going home." Like you wanted to beat the crap out of him and then take his ball and then you go play and tell him, "Well, now you go home." That's the way these people make us feel. So we got about 8 or 9 minutes left. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello in the breach on the Crusade channel. Always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Please follow Joe and I on Facebook and YouTube at the front line with Joe and Joe. And if you're feeling generous on GoFundMe, you can find us at Support the Front Line with Joe and Joe and drop a couple bucks in. And remember always to keep us in your prayers. So we'll probably get to one more story. Where are we going to head, Joe? Now, we say all the time, okay, we're not ideologues, okay? And I will dispute anybody who tries to make it seem like Joe and I don't criticize the right when they start with their shenanigans, okay? The Chamber of Commerce is squarely in the sights of the front line with Joe and Joe Resinello is going to tell you why.
Well, basically, I mean, the Chamber of Commerce, this is clearly a Republican organization. You have currently 26 million Americans that are out of work. Basically, Donald Trump is pushing some legislation that's affecting folks in the Chamber of Commerce, whereby they say, 300,000?
You got 300,000 businesses represented by the chamber, okay?
It's visa workers, am I correct?
Yes.
Foreign workers?
So what you have in a nutshell, okay, is that they're filing a lawsuit against Trump demanding, get this, demanding that the president of the United States, okay, allows them to import foreign workers. And as Joe said, while more than 26 million Americans are unemployed. So what you have is Tom Donahue. We've mentioned him before on the show. We don't, again, I don't want to badmouth anybody right now. The way this guy operates, we don't consider him a friend, okay? The lawsuit is because Trump expanded his executive order that halted, didn't eliminate, halted H-1B, H-4, H-2B, L-1, and J-1 visas, okay? So that foreigners, unfortunately, cannot come and take the jobs that right now Americans need. It's just, I mean, Joe, what's the problem? Americans are hurting right now. I was out of work for 3 months. I haven't been on unemployment since I was 18 years old. I don't want to be on unemployment. I want to be back at work.
And that's just about taking care of your own. I mean, charity begins at home. I'm all for, listen, I've said it. I'm for legal immigration. I'm for helping, the stranger. I'm all for that. But at the same time, there's 26 million Americans that are out of work. And the Chamber of Commerce, they're off. There are a lot of people that could fill those jobs, Americans that could fill those jobs. And frankly, that's where they should look first and foremost.
Right. And when people need to start calling out the Chamber of Commerce, they don't want Americans filling those jobs because they have to pay those Americans more. That's the bottom line. You come from India. Joe's been to India a million times. He's seen the poverty in India, front and center. Those people over there will work for half of what an American worker works for, wants to get paid. And they'll do it. God bless them. I get it. Okay. They come from poverty. But the Chamber of Commerce has no excuse.
And that's why they're doing this. You see, don't think that this is about equity or helping the foreigner. This is about, it's in their financial interest. You see, this is why, again, the Republicans got it wrong sometimes too. Many times, actually. You see, we've said this on our show in the past. Joe and I we try not to look left or right. We look up. See, God is not going to judge you on the fact that you were a good Republican
or a good Democrat.
You got to be a godly person and you do the will of God. That's who gets into heaven. People who do the will of God on earth. What's the one prayer that Jesus taught us? the Our Father. What is it? Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
But Joe, a lot of these people are Christian.
Of course,
a lot
they
of
are.
these Chamber of Commerce
name
people
only.
are
I mean,
Christian.
there's tons of people. Joe and I, we were talking about this even before the show, and just in terms of preparing. I mean, I've worked with people who went to fancy Catholic schools, Notre Dame, Georgetown, Boston College. I don't see. I'll be honest with you. They throw elbows like savages. They live like Darwinists and like
Right.
they follow Machiavelli.
They live like practical atheists.
I mean, I've seen this in the corporate setting. Smart people, gifted people, but at the same time, they're savages. That's not the ticket to heaven.
But Joe, when you have 300,000 businesses that represent or that need to fill jobs, that probably amounts to millions of jobs, and they want these people coming in from overseas, knowing how many people are suffering and out of work that could fill those jobs, and they want to sue the Trump administration so they could save money on labor costs, then sorry, this is part of that reform of our capitalist system that needs to take place. The answer is no. The answer, just like we say, the answer to the left is no on much of their agenda. The answer is no to you. American workers get paid American wages so that they can raise their families. You're doing business in America. You take care of Americans. You don't take care of foreign workers. You take care of foreign workers after Americans are employed, not before they're employed. That's the message to the Chamber of Commerce. Now, I will say this. They're suing and they're saying that the president doesn't have the authority to do this. Well, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to argue the case. Something tells me that the president of the United States has infinitely more authority on this issue than you do, Mr. Donahue. And that's the bottom line. Now, we have I think we got a couple minutes. But, Joe, touch on this real quick. We have one final story, right? You wanted to get
I want to talk about this. I think it's a great story to kind of put things in perspective. I mean, leftist mobs have been attacking churches all over the world. And there's sadly, well, it's factual in my view. There's something satanic about it. After a string of attacks that rocked U.S. churches last week, Americans gathered Sunday with the hope that things might finally calm down. They didn't. If anything, the insurgents expanded their campaign to the global scene. Arson in Paris, excrement along church walls in southern France, statues defaced in Calgary. It all points to a dangerous turning point in this mob mentality. So what's the answer, Joe P? Well, this is my view. You have to know that promoting the truth and not giving a millimeter to these monsters, that's the only way you can fight.
Have they been listening to the Frontline with Joe and Joe?
They should be.
Not a millimeter. That means just say no.
And people need to find the voice of courage, and not give in. Don't get confused that this is about George Floyd, about racial justice. This is a Marxist, anti-American movement that is cynically using the incident of George Floyd and other things to promote things that are going to crush America. This is a deep spiritual ugliness that has hijacked what began as a legitimate grievance against the abuse of police power. It's time we spoke up, Joe P., and prayed hard that God would restore order. And here's the thing. I truly believe that if we prayed the rosary every day, Our Lady would bring peace to our nation. On October 10th, I want to recommend this to all good people out there. Fatima for America. Be a team captain and organize a rosary rally in your community.
We are going to do a video on that, a separate video where we're going to really promote this, okay? We prayed in 2016. I am firmly convinced we did a rosary rally in our town. And before the 2016 election, a good Franciscan priest, Father Marius, came and led the Eucharistic procession in our town on a street. The cops were blocking it off. And I believe those prayers were answered. I really do. Because Donald Trump is a savior? No. But Hillary Clinton would have been a disaster. So God gave us a bit of a reprieve. We have to ask him for 4 more years. And then we have to do our part to help the president in fighting this culture war. So we're going to end it there. And we want to thank you all for joining us at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. We were way in the breach tonight on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, follow Joe and I on Facebook and YouTube at The Frontline with Joe and Joe on YouTube. Subscribe to us. Please hit the like for our videos and the little bell. That really helps with the algorithm. Follow us on Facebook. Share everything with your friends. And we have a GoFundMe campaign. If you want to drop in a couple bucks, if you like what we're doing, go on GoFundMe and look up Support the Frontline with Joe and Joe. And as always, please support us with your prayers. We know that you do. And remember that our conversation is your conversation. And that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll see you next time. Good show. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to The Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resillo. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Our call-in telephone number is 844-527-8723. And our live chat room, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in, is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. Please follow Joe and I on Facebook. Follow our page. Please share it with your friends. We have a lot of content going on there, not only our Facebook show, but also a lot of interviews. So follow us there. Share it with your friends. And on YouTube, if you're watching this or any program that we do on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. Please hit the like button and please hit the little bell, because with their algorithms, that's how we could get more widely seen, which obviously will help us to grow our audience. So we want to thank you all for joining us. We got a great show for you. As Joe and I always say, there's a lot of nonsense going out there right now. We're going to be covering Joe Biden and riots. We're going to be talking